Chapter 632. A country cannot be without a ruler for even a day. So many people are looking forward to it. How long do we have to wait? Not only does King Qi not attend court, he did not even make an appearance during the national funeral. He did not even attend the funeral. He is completely focused on finding the princess. Do we have to wait until he finds her? Whispers were incessant as the crowd probed and cheered each other on. King Qi once swore that he would not become emperor, and on the day he woke up, he repeated these words in front of all of us. It is clear that he truly has no desire for the throne. Since that is the case, it is time to elect a new emperor. Right. We have to elect someone who can control the situation. The previous emperor had so many princes, and there must be more than one or two talented ones. Right. Elect a new emperor. In this atmosphere, many princes secretly glanced at each other. There was no lack of honest princes who kept their heads down, but the domineering atmosphere was growing thicker and thicker. There was one thing that was not wrong. The previous emperor had so many children, so who should they elect? Within King Qi residence, Gong Dai opened his arms to tie up his hair and change his clothes. As he changed into his court robes, the pitch-black color added layer upon layer to Gong Dai's tall and straight body, adding to his suffocating majesty. The silver flood dragon was vivid and lifelike, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws as it coiled around the hem of his robes. After the white jade belt was fastened, his entire person seemed even more dashing and heroic. But between his broad shoulders and narrow waist, there was a hint of elegance. It had to be said that after reaching the 8th tier, Gong Dai's aura had been revealed, displaying the words domineering and awe-inspiring to the extreme. His silver-grey hair made his skin seem even whiter, and his facial features were exquisite. He seemed even more handsome than before. This kind of beauty that made one unable to open their eyes was tinged with a trace of coldness and an unrestrained danger. But no one dared to raise their head to admire him. Even a careless glance would cause one's heart to palpitate in fear, much less stare at him. After changing his clothes, Gong Dai sat on a wooden four-legged chair and had someone tie up his hair. Gong Dai's appearance could be clearly reflected in the massive mercury mirror. He coldly and domineeringly sat before the mirror, his eyes narrowed in thought. Lo Qi walked in. At this time, he was missing a hand and was even more silent. Your Highness. Everyone is ready. Strands of hair were tied up. The silver-grey color seemed to have merged with the endless starlight. Gong Dai's thin blood-red lips curved slightly, his eyes cold. Pass down my order. Kill all the Snow Clan members in Daiyu State who are not registered. That light voice had instantly decided the fate of thousands of people. But this was not the end. Inform the other 3 countries that no matter what benefits they want, I only want one. He paused and narrowed his eyes. I want there to be no Shui surname in the 4 kingdoms. Either assimilate, or die. Lo Qi's lips twitched. He wanted to say that there were good people among the Snow Clan who didn't want to be assimilated. They just didn't want to give up their surname, not all of them were bad. However, he knew that this time, the Snow Clan had really crossed the line. In the past, the king had tolerated the Snow Clan and didn't want to kill them because of the princess. But now, no one would be able to stop His Highness now. Yes. With this order, tens of thousands of people would suffer. In less than a year, there would be no Shui surname on this continent. The silver-white crown that belonged to King Qi fell down. Together with the high-collared court robes, Gong Dai's cold and dignified aura had a hint of abstinence. He didn't sit up straight. He leaned against the back of the chair, his left hand on the armrest and the back of his hand supporting his face. In the full-length mirror, there was a hint of laziness. And Mount Yunding. He looked at himself in the mirror with a smile. Have you found the exact location of Mount Yunding? Found it. Lo Qi knelt on one knee and replied word by word. It's in Ji City. Gong Dai blinked and smiled lightly. Pass down the order. If Qiu Zhongchan doesn't appear in front of me in 10 days, I will blow up Mount Yunding. Thinking about it this way, it seemed quite interesting. Lo Qi's scalp tingled. When he thought of the thousands of people on Mount Yunding and how much respect the people of Jianghu had for Mount Yunding, he didn't know what kind of storm would arise this time. Yes, Your Highness. Lo Chi received the order and went out. But not long after he went out, Luo Xiaoqi came in again with a monkey in his hand. The monkey was originally in Luo Xiaoqi's hand, but when it saw Gong Dai, it immediately bared its teeth and screamed crazily. There was no other reason. Gong Dai had traumatized it too much. The night before, Gong Dai suddenly caught it and then ordered people to use an iron clamp to reach into its mouth and take out the holy stone from its body. No matter how it screamed and screamed, Gong Dai just gently pressed on its body and it couldn't move. A white-bearded old man opened its mouth with an iron clamp that had been prepared in advance. He didn't care what kind of pain the iron clamp would bring to its body. The white-bearded old man groped for a long time and made a sound of surprise. "Your Highness, this monkey is really strange. The stone you mentioned is really not in its stomach, but in its throat. It was born with a deformity, and its throat is divided into pouches. When its throat was opened, the monkey felt that it had never been in so much pain." Gong Dai smiled gently. "Take it out." Squeak. When the monkey heard this, it wanted to struggle, but it couldn't move. It could only stare at Gong Dai with a pair of big and round eyes. The pleading in its eyes was so obvious. Gong Dai was unmoved. Under the bright light, his handsome face was like a god's, but his smile was faint. It was reflected in the monkey's mind, reminding it of the terrifying evil god that was carved in the sacrificial ceremony many years ago. When the iron clamp reached into the pouch, the monkey's mouth was immediately filled with blood and it screamed in horror. The stone seemed to have become one with its pouch, but there was no other way. It could only die. It could only endure it. Who told the prince to want this stone? The blood-stained stones were pulled out little by little. The monkey was on the verge of death and could no longer scream. Later, the doctor prescribed medicine for the monkey, and it slowly recovered. But from then on, the monkey developed a deep fear of Gongju. When others shouted "Your Highness," it would tremble. At this time, it saw the devil again. But even if it struggled desperately, the terrifying aura belonging to Gong Dai was pervasive. It suffocated it. "Let it go." Luo Xiaoqi obeyed and quickly released the little monkey. As soon as the monkey fell to the ground, it immediately jumped. It wanted to go out. It would die here. Gong Dai calmly looked at the monkey looking for the exit. Finally, it rushed to the door, but in the next second, the room was flat and the door was slammed shut. Gong Ju's ghostly voice came from behind, causing it to instantly explode. "Come here. Go over. Don't you want to die?" The monkey had lived for many years and had seen too many evil gods. It was very intelligent. It could feel that Gong Dai was very dangerous. It was afraid of him. Chapter 633. Gong Dai did not look at it. He looked at himself in the mirror. The black jade ring on his finger flashed with light. There was originally a pair, and the other one was on his neck. His eyes darkened and the smile on his lips suddenly disappeared. "Come here." He was clearly speaking to the monkey, but the coldness in his tone made the dozen people present involuntarily kneel down. This time, the little monkey could clearly hear the threat. It was as if he was saying, "Don't make this king say it a third time." Gong Dai's aura was too strong, but animals were even more sensitive. It had gained sentience and after weighing the pros and cons, it finally tried its best to control its instinct to escape. It slowly approached Gong Dai. The closer it got, the more afraid it became. Its fur all stood up. Its large eyes revealed a human-like panic. The surrounding servants trembled as they knelt on the ground. They felt that the king was becoming more and more terrifying. That pressure was almost tangible. It made people unable to have any rebellious thoughts, only obedience. Gong Dai saw the pitiful little monkey in the mirror. It was really small. With its body curled up, it was not even as tall as the thick legs of the chair. At this moment, its 4 claws were tightly clawing at the smooth Phoebe Junnan wood floor, as if it would escape at the slightest movement. The demon-like black-clothed man in the grandfather mirror lowered his head to look at the little black monkey whose fur stood on end. There was a strange harmony in this scene. "Come up." Gong Dai's left hand supported his face as he lowered his chin. His right hand tapped on the wide armrest. His black eyes looked at the monkey quietly, as if he had suddenly become patient. How could the monkey dare to get so close to him? Wouldn't that be asking for its monkey life? But it did not dare to resist. It squatted on the ground and looked up at him timidly. It did not move. Gong Dai suddenly thought of royal sister. His baby would also show such a timid look. However, the one in front of him was an ugly monkey. Will you only be obedient if this king crushes your bones bit by bit? Come up, come. The impatient words caused the monkey to tremble all over. The next second, it jumped onto the black wooden armrest and curled up at the top, taking up a tiny bit of space. Gong Dai looked at the angry look on its face and ruffled its hair. That kind of terrifying moment. Let the monkey suddenly scream. Its pupils constricted and it subconsciously gave Gong Dai a swipe with its claw. She was enjoying the warmth of its furry fur and the trembling of fear. Caught out of the blue, Gong Dai did not dodge, but the monkey showed an expression as if the sky was about to collapse. That expression made the sullen Gong Dai suddenly laugh. Ignoring the scratches on his hand, he once again pressed his hand on Monkey's head and rubbed it hard. Sharp claws. How about I pull them out one by one? When the monkey heard that, it immediately retracted its 4 claws, looking like it didn't dare to do it again. It was pressed down by Gong Dai's large hands until it was swaying left and right. This time, it was much more obedient. It didn't dodge, and it didn't dare to be rash. It looked at Gong Dai with teary eyes and its 2 hands made a human-like gesture of pleading, which made Gong Dai laugh out loud. Prince. It had been a long time since he laughed like this. Why did they still feel a chill? Everyone kneeling on the ground felt their hearts beat fast. Finally, Luo Xiaoqi braced herself and said something. Prince, it's time to go to court. Gong Dai seemed to be in a good mood. He forcefully ravaged Monkey and directly lifted it up. Yes, it's time to go to court. Gong Dai put the little monkey on his shoulder. As expected, it retracted its claws and obediently squatted on Gong Dai's shoulder. Its understanding of the situation made Gong Dai very satisfied. He looked at the mirror and finally got up. If I don't go now, they won't remember who this king is. Gong Dai smiled and went out. At this time, who dared to say that it was inappropriate for Gong Dai to bring Monkey to court? Wasn't that courting death? Luo Xiaoqi hurriedly followed. Originally, the prince didn't want to care about those people. The prince was focused on finding the princess, but he didn't want those people to mess with him. He was afraid that after today, those people wouldn't dare to act rashly. That's right. Only by suppressing all the voices of opposition and those with bad intentions, could the prince use the power of the whole country to find a person. He just hoped that those people wouldn't die too miserably. Dai Yu State had been experiencing too many funerals recently. The court was in a mess. Everyone said that they wanted to nominate someone to temporarily manage the government affairs. But who was this person? Some people said that the first prince was the eldest prince. Although he was not the eldest prince, he occupied the title of eldest. Wasn't this a logical thing to do? Some people also recommended the 7th prince. The 7th prince was young, but he was very smart. Most importantly, his family was powerful. Although it was far from Gong Che and Gong Dai, it was much stronger than the other princes. Some people also recommended the 5th prince, while others recommended the 10th prince. The previous emperor had over 30 children. Excluding the few that were killed by Gong Dai, Gong Che, and a few princesses, there were still quite a lot of candidates. Many of them were very honest, some were pretending to be honest, and some were very obvious. In short, it was very lively now. At this moment, an announcement was heard. Prince Qi has arrived. The entire court instantly quieted down. Some people widened their eyes in surprise. Didn't they say that Prince Qi was focused on finding the missing person? Why did he suddenly come to the court when he hadn't shown himself? No matter what everyone thought in their hearts, as soon as Gong Yi appeared, almost everyone put away their thoughts at the same time and prepared to wait and see what would happen. Soon, Gong Dai appeared at the entrance of the main hall. Everyone's gaze was uncontrollably attracted to him. However, Gong Dai's aura was too strong. They couldn't help but look below Gong Dai's shoulders. Wait, why was there a monkey? But for some reason, no one dared to say anything about Gong Dai's untimely action. That oppressive aura that seemed to have substance, before he even got close, was already enough to make people's legs tremble. How lively! Gong Dai smiled lightly. No one could tell what he meant. They only felt that his smile could chill people's hearts. If not for the fact that their identities were different, the moment Gong Dai appeared, everyone only wanted to kneel down to express their respect and obedience. Could it be that this was the so-called domineering aura of a ruler? He strode in, and the powerful deterrence made the officials on both sides involuntarily lean to the side. As for Gong Dai's brothers, they all had different expressions. They didn't know what kind of expression to use to face him, because Gong Dai wanted to stand among them. But no, Gong Dai directly walked up. What was he doing? Everyone's eyes widened. They wanted to say something, but no words came out. They watched as Gong Dai calmly walked up the golden stairs to the dragon throne that symbolized status and power. Then, he turned around and sat down. The monkey very obediently lay on the carved dragon head on the right armrest of the dragon throne. Gong Dai placed his hand on its head and leaned forward slightly to look down. His cold gaze swept over everyone, making all kinds of thoughts disappear. They only had the impulse to kneel down and shout long live. Speak. Gong Yi narrowed his eyes, and his unhurried voice clearly reached everyone's ears. Who do you want to be the emperor? Chapter 634. As soon as Gong Ju's words came out, the entire hall fell into a strange silence. Quite a few people were trying to figure out what Gong Dai was thinking. Who do you want to be emperor? Was it appropriate for you to ask this question from the dragon throne? Everyone blushed with shame. Some smart people had already understood the deeper meaning of Gong Ju's words. For King Qi to ask this question, it was clear that he did not wish to become emperor himself. But he had sat on the dragon throne and used an absolutely tyrannical tone to ask this question, clearly conveying one message: no matter who becomes emperor, you must know that this dragon throne is not something that this king can sit on whenever he wants. This meant that no matter who became emperor, King Qi's status would be higher than the emperor's. His question could be roughly translated as, which one of you wants to be this king's puppet emperor? Everyone quickly understood Gong Dai's meaning, and different expressions appeared on their faces. This was especially true for the princes. They had thought that their chance had come, but King Qi's words indicated that he did not want to be emperor, but wanted to monopolize power. Then had he been playing with them when he had said, if I don't reach the summit, I won't be emperor? Seeing that no one was answering, Gong Dai leaned back, the monkey in his hand being squeezed into various shapes. He narrowed his eyes. He did not have time to delay this matter. He had to end it quickly. At this moment, someone stepped forward. He was an elder of 2 dynasties, one of the 6 first-rank ministers of the imperial cabinet, and also the grandfather of the first prince. Might I ask if King Qi has a suitable candidate in mind? Gong Dai bluntly replied, I do. Everyone subconsciously avoided the question of whether King Qi had committed a great crime by hastily sitting on the dragon throne. Instead, they directly asked who King Qi wanted to be emperor. If King Qi already had a candidate in mind, then even if it was a puppet emperor, no one else would have a chance. The old minister glanced at the first prince and hesitantly asked, which prince? Gong Ju glanced at the crowd with a smile, and then his cold voice quietly resounded throughout the hall. Prince 19, Gong Yuan. The crowd began to whisper amongst themselves. It wasn't that they were dissatisfied, but that they couldn't immediately remember who this Gong Yuan was. Suddenly, someone remembered. Could the Prince of Qi be referring to the foolish prince who had lost his mother and became a little foolish? Speaking of which, that child was rather pitiful. He was the child of Emperor Xian and his cousin, but there was something wrong with his head. His mother had died, so he had a miserable life in the palace. Gong Dai was thinking about the night when he was 9. In order to celebrate this child's birthday, he and his imperial sister were in the cold palace, eating the wedding cake. That night was the day Gong 19 was born, and it was also the turning point in their lives. A minister frowned and said, Prince 19 is only 6 years old, right? 8. Gong Ju calmly corrected him. He remembered very clearly that 8 years had passed. Gongju's words made everyone even more silent. The Prince of Qi really wanted to find a puppet emperor. What kind of emperor could an 8-year-old child be? What kind of emperor could he be? At this moment, the 7th prince, who was a little impulsive, stepped forward. He looked at Gong Dai and said angrily, "The one in power should be the one with the ability." "But what do you mean, 9th brother? Are you electing 19th brother because you want to be the regent? If you do this, what will you do to the rest of us? Are you the one who rules the Daiyu state?" After he finished speaking, he realized that no one agreed with him. His grandfather, uncle, and the others all looked frightened. Even his brothers, who had been ready to make a move, were silent. The 7th prince spent most of his time in his fief, so he didn't have a thorough understanding of Gong Dai's deterrence. Now that he said this, everyone was worried for him. Gong Dai looked at his brother, who was said to be smart, and didn't say anything. His silence put a lot of pressure on the 7th prince. No one spoke up for him. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, he seemed to be fighting alone. Facing Gong Dai, he felt like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. He took a deep breath and tried his best to make himself look righteous. "Also, what right do you have to speak from the dragon throne? 9th brother, you think too highly of yourself." Gong Dai still didn't say anything, but he raised his eyebrows slightly. Suddenly, there was a sense of danger in the air. The sky outside was gloomy, and the hall wasn't as resplendent as it used to be. It seemed especially cold and heavy. "Continue." Gong Dai actually said this. His attitude of looking down on the 7th prince greatly irritated him. His chest rose and fell as he said angrily, "Father valued you so much, but during the national funeral, you didn't even appear once because you were looking for Gong Yimo. But for Imperial Father to be like this, who did this to him? Wasn't it Gong Yimo? Why did the Crown Prince die? Wasn't it because of Gong Yimo? Both of you are obsessed with a woman. What right do you have to sit here now? Someone who only cares about personal relationships and didn't even attend father's and brother's funerals, is he really worthy of holding the imperial power of Daiyu state? He only cared about making himself feel good, but he didn't realize that the pressure in the hall was getting heavier and heavier. Many of the people with weaker mental fortitude were already trembling. If Gong Dai coughed, a large number of them would probably kneel down. At this moment, the 7th prince seemed to realize that something was wrong. His grandfather glared at him fiercely. "King Chu, are you drunk?" King Chu was the 7th prince's title. The 7th prince was stunned by his grandfather's words. He looked at his grandfather in disbelief. He instantly understood something, but a deep sense of indignation arose in his heart. They were both father's children, so why was Gong Dai superior to them? "I'm not wrong." He saw his grandfather's aged face instantly turn pale. The 7th prince stood in front of the throne room and loudly questioned Gongju, who was sitting on the dragon throne. He clenched his fist. "What right do you have?" Gong Dai chuckled. It had to be said that although his laughter made everyone present feel a chill down their spines, his voice was really beautiful. It quietly resounded in the hall, and it had a unique timbre. But when they thought of who he was, everyone suddenly regained their senses. They lowered their heads and distanced themselves from the pitiful 7th prince. "What right do I have?" he asked softly. Although he was laughing, the monkey under him sensed danger and instantly stood up. It was restless under his hand, but it didn't dare to make a sound. "Just because I dare to sit here. Do you dare to come up?" There was a deathly silence in the hall. Sitting on the dragon throne was a crime punishable by death. Everyone wanted to, but they didn't dare. "Whether or not I have the right to be in power," he sneered. "You're right about one thing. I want to be the regent, and I want Gong Shizhou to be the puppet emperor. This is a notice to you, not a laughable request for opinions, understand?" Chapter 635. His straightforward words made everyone suck in a breath of cold air. He wanted to be the regent, wanted to set up a puppet emperor, and even threatened everyone in court. But the problem was that no one dared to refute King Qi's arrogance. In terms of power, Zhao Yu alone could make you lose a layer of skin. In terms of money, the entire country's money was in Gong Dai's pocket. In terms of fighting power, it was said that he already had a mature military camp that no one could defeat. In terms of ability, Gong Dai was only 17R. He was able to reach this stage, hold multiple positions, and sit on the dragon throne without them daring to say a word. This was the embodiment of his ability. The seventh prince's face was green and white, but it was very good-looking. Also, is the name of royal sister something you can call? His cold voice suddenly became stern at the last sentence. His eyes were like lightning, tightly locking onto the seventh prince. An awe-inspiring pressure suddenly appeared. It actually made the seventh prince's pupils shrink. He, who had been speaking confidently, suddenly knelt down. His face paled, and he struggled to get up, but found that his palms and back were covered in cold sweat. His legs were weak, and he could no longer get up. A gust of wind blew, and the entire hall was filled with a ruthless aura. King Qi was angry. For a long time, they had been afraid of Prince Qi, mainly because of the previous accumulation of deterrence. However, they didn't know how terrifying Gong Ju had become after suffering such a great calamity. He was no longer the soft-hearted and apprehensive King Qi from before. He was the regent. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew in the hall. This raging wind made everyone panic, and some even wanted to flee. But they only heard a series of peng, peng, and the 12 doors closed one after another. This action frightened everyone present. Many of those who did not have enough willpower banged on the doors or shouted for the guards outside. The light in the hall suddenly dimmed. Gong Ju ignored the noise in the hall and bowed his head to play with the little monkey's claws. The little monkey's body trembled, but it obediently held back its knuckles and let Gong Ju play with it. This subtle gesture of flattery made Gong Ju suddenly feel that it was good to have a pet. The guards outside seemed to be dead, and there was no response at all. Everyone could not help but feel a chill in their hearts as they realized that they had become turtles in a jar. What was going on? In the past, King Qi was cruel, but in the end, he still relied on solid evidence to control people. But now, he actually locked all the officials in the hall. This kind of unscrupulous action, was this really the old King Qi? Could it be that he was so agitated that he went crazy? Slowly, the crowd quieted down. King Qi sat motionless on the dragon throne, but the pressure of his internal energy seemed to be everywhere. They did not dare to be rash, and their hearts began to tremble. At this moment, they finally realized that without the princess, King Qi was like an unsheathed bloodthirsty sword. They had been too careless to think that King Qi would be depressed because he couldn't find the princess. Who would have thought that he would become even more terrifying? Not only was he not depressed, he had even gone berserk. One of the old ministers couldn't bear such a provocation. He clutched his chest as an official beside him hurriedly supported him. The old minister trembled as he asked Gong Ju, "Can't you see?" Gong Ju lowered his head to tease his pet and spoke casually, but his cold voice rang in everyone's ears. "This prince wants you all to be obedient." With a flick of his finger, the monkey bounced off his knee. The monkey was clever and quickly climbed back onto Gong Ju's knee. Gong Ju chuckled. His voice seemed to say, "I hope you can all be as obedient as this monkey." His smile sent chills down people's spines. His handsome face could not be seen clearly because it was too dark in the hall, but the danger behind his laughter was like a dagger to one's back. "What if we don't?" A pure faction official was very dissatisfied with Gong Dai's tyrannical attitude and straightened his back to ask. Gong Dai finally raised his head and glanced at him. Imperial Father told this prince in a dream that he still lacks some people to talk to. "Gong Dai, are you not following the law by doing this?" The first prince asked in a righteous tone. Gong Dai suddenly thought of his royal sister's answer and chuckled. "This prince is the law." After he laughed, his expression turned cold. The moment his face darkened, an invisible pressure seemed to appear in the air. People knelt down one after another. And this kneeling represented obedience. Gong Dai began to become restless. He did not have the patience to be entangled with these people. Gong Ju's monkey also screamed in pain because Gong Ju had lost his strength. The dark hall felt inexplicably creepy. This prince's patience is limited. He frowned slightly and sneered. After 3 counts, Anyone still standing is this prince's enemy. He dared to be so domineering. Many of the nobles and officials were stunned. He did not give a reason, did not allow consideration, and did not care about the consequences. He announced his position so domineeringly and then gave people the choice of obedience or death. Everyone couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts. In the past, when the emperor and crown prince were still alive, they had always respected the nobles and officials. They had always adhered to a win-win rule, which was why they had been able to grow so quickly. In the past, when Gong Yimo was still alive, although King Qi was scary, he would not do things for no reason. He would not do things based on his preferences and speak based on his power. But now that Gong Yimo was gone, Gong Dai was like a crazy demon. He would not patiently persuade people like Gong Cheng, who had clearly made a decision but still gave people a way out. He would also not be like Gong Che, who had given everyone a chance to benefit from each other. He was like a tyrannical and dictatorial tyrant. Respect. You just need to obey. 1. Gong Dai narrowed his eyes and leaned back, relaxing his body. He did not have time to play Tai Chi with these people. In the past, he had considered too many things and suppressed himself for too long. He should have done this long ago. Apart from those who had already knelt, no one moved. Gong Dai did not care about them and directly said, 2. A faint light flashed in his eyes. The monkey beside him also squatted on the dragon's head armrest and bared its teeth fiercely at the people below. It knew that Gong Dai would definitely do as he said. After being abused by Gong Dai for so long, it only hoped that a few stubborn or lucky people would have a taste of its pain. Everyone looked at each other, especially the princes. They could see the struggle in each other's eyes. Could it be that their restless hearts were going to be suppressed before they even started? But before they could react, many of the officials who supported them, or some of the princes' mothers, knelt down. Once the power behind them knelt down, some of the princes had no choice but to grit their teeth and kneel. There were only a dozen people left standing. Gong Dai lowered his head the entire time. Until the last word, he slowly raised his head. 3. As the word 3 fell, his eyes swept across the crowd. His eyes were bottomless. Chapter 636. The oldest official suddenly sighed and knelt down. As soon as he knelt, the last of the Qing dynasty's backbone knelt down to show their allegiance. With the last pillar of support succumbing to Gong Dai's tyrannical power, the princes were no longer able to hold their own. They knelt down unwillingly. Finally, there was no one left standing in the entire hall. Their kneeling today completely sealed the fate of Dai Yu State. Little Monkey felt that Gong Dai's fighting spirit had diminished, so he lay on his lap and whimpered gloomily. After a long while, Gong Dai recovered from his violent state and regained his calm. He smiled and asked, Gong Dai, I want to inherit Gong Dai's throne. This prince wants Gong Yuan to succeed the throne. Does anyone have any objections? There was no sound in the hall. It was as if the hundreds of kneeling people did not exist. Gong Dai narrowed his eyes. You're not willing? It was as if a string had suddenly snapped. This implied threat woke everyone up from their daze. We second the motion, everyone quickly kowtowed. We second the motion, their voices resounded throughout the hall. Finally, the door opened. The 12 doors opened one by one. The cold and solemn air seemed to have been soothed. They had come back to life. They did not know why, but when the door opened again and light shone in, they felt as if they had escaped death. Everyone was shocked to find that they had broken out in cold sweat. It turned out that the body was always more sensitive than the mind. Gong Dai really wanted to kill people to vent his anger and wash the imperial court with blood. The sudden appearance of the light diluted Gong Dai's hostility. He gently patted Little Monkey and said softly, 19th brother is still young. I am the regent. Does anyone have any objections? The important officials were all kneeling on the ground. They had been suppressed by Gong Dai to the point that they had no temper. How could they have any objections? We second the motion, thus, Gong Dai easily took over the sovereignty. However, this was only a superficial victory. If he really wanted to hold power and centralize the imperial power, it was impossible to do so without bloodshed. The following month was known as the Bloody Winter Moon. Some of the nobles were dissatisfied with Gong Dai's tyrannical methods, and they felt that Gong Dai was suppressing them so that he could take back his authority in the future. Of course, Gong Dai really wanted to do this, so they joined forces to resist. The first prince and the seventh prince took command and denounced Gong Dai together. What happened next was very simple. Gong Dai violently used force to suppress the other party. Originally, everyone's understanding of the Lei Feng stopped at the stage where it could build roads and dig rivers. Although they knew that it was very strong, Gong Yimo's years of hard work had given them a preconceived notion that the Lei Feng could not be used to kill people. But why not? For Gong Dai, there was no such thing as impossible. Everyone thought that Gong Dai wouldn't go against Gong Yimo's wishes and start a war with the army. However, he did. He directly mobilized 1,000 soldiers and destroyed tens of thousands of enemy troops in a battle in the countryside. He caught them off guard. That kind of overwhelming and destructive power caused the entire Daiyu state to be shrouded in a haze. Some people wanted to crack the Lei Feng's composition, but under Gong Dai's control, they were very bold. All raw materials, even fireworks and firecrackers, were listed as prohibited good. Some people wanted to buy from overseas, but they didn't expect Gong Dai to have already made arrangements. In the end, they had no choice. The opponents wanted to steal from Gong Dai's subordinates, but they didn't expect the Lei Feng's control to be so strict that it made people's hair stand on end. Moreover, no one dared to betray Gong Dai. Therefore, in less than a month, a huge rebellion was suppressed. The imperial court was washed with blood, and many new faces were replaced. These people were all Gong Dai's loyal followers. Power was concentrated in Gong Dai's camp, and the title of Grand Regent was well deserved. But even so, the prince wasn't happy. On the day of the execution, Gong Dai didn't lead the execution. His two brothers were the main culprits, kneeling below the stage. Behind them were more than a dozen officials, and behind the officials were more than 100 accomplices. This was only the first batch. Gong Dai had always understood the principle of cutting the weeds and eliminating the roots. This bloodbath wouldn't stop until a few thousand lives were lost. The curses and cries were incessant, but after the knife went down, it stopped abruptly. The entire execution platform seemed to be stained with blood, and the smell of blood and coldness filled the air. There weren't many spectators, and they would probably have nightmares if they saw it. Gong Dai sat at the side and drank, looking very calm. Blood splattered everywhere. The scene in front of him was so cruel that even the executioner didn't dare to watch. He secretly glanced at Gong Ju, who was still sitting there with a cold expression. It was as if the scene in front of him was nothing to him. The executioner couldn't help but calm down. He couldn't lose face in front of the regent. Hearing the curses from below, Gong Dai's expression didn't change. If curses were useful, he wouldn't be sitting here. But Gong Dai's heart was suddenly filled with anger. The little monkey in his arms was instantly enraged, and then it carefully burrowed into the ground. Recently, this scary person's temper had become more and more unstable, causing it to be treading on thin ice every day, afraid that it would be skinned alive the next second. Just as it was about to escape, Gong Dai's big hand pressed down and pressed it into his arms. "Where are you going?" Gong Dai, who had drunk some wine, had some color on his pale face, but his expression was cold and dangerous, causing the monkey to want to scream. "Even you want to leave me?" The monkey widened its eyes and quickly shook its head. It wouldn't dare. "Sir, please don't look at me like that, okay? I'm so scared." Gong Dai didn't seem to see the pleading in its eyes. "You're not allowed to leave me." The little monkey nodded quickly. It would rather die than leave. It swore. At this moment, the guilty official below the stage heard Gong Dai's words because he was close by. He couldn't help but sneer. "I didn't expect that there's something the regent can't do." He wasn't afraid of anything when he was about to die. When he saw Gong Dai's cold eyes looking at him, he laughed loudly. "I heard that the prince hasn't given up looking for Gong Yimo. It's already been a month." He laughed sinisterly and knelt on the ground. His hair was messy, and his eyes were filled with hatred. "She's long dead. Swallowed by fishes and prawns, not even her bones are left." As soon as he finished speaking, a murderous aura came over. His body fell to the side involuntarily. His hands and feet were tied, so he couldn't struggle to get up. He curled up on the ground and cursed. Gong Yimo was innocent and did countless good deed. Why did she end up like this? It's all because of you. Gong Dai. You're an inauspicious person. You're the one who caused her death. You're the one who cursed her to death. Suddenly, his voice disappeared. It was Gong Dai. With a wave of his palm, he broke all the veins in the other party's heart. The execution ground suddenly fell into a dead silence. Gong Dai sat there with his hands pressed on the table. His eyes were slightly sinister as he stared at the dead man. Chapter 637. The executioner groaned inwardly. You are about to die, why do you have to speak so quickly? What if the regent gets angry and exterminates your entire family? Aren't you asking for it? The executioner did not dare to carry out the execution. He stood at the side and did not dare to move. Even those who were cursing shut their mouths. An invisible murderous aura spread. Even if they were about to die, under Gong Dai's dangerous murderous aura, they could not utter a single word. You all also think that the royal sister is dead? Gong Dai's eyes suddenly swept across the crowd slowly. Everyone present felt as if they had been hung by something cold. There was a sudden feeling in their mind. That was, if they did not answer properly, everyone present would die together with him. The long hair fluttered without wind. That monkey had long run away. Everyone knelt down. This was a completely subconscious action. The executioner secretly cursed his bad luck and said with a trembling voice. Replying to the regent, the princess is blessed by the heavens. Nothing will happen to her. Bang! Everyone did not dare to raise their heads. But from the sound, they knew that Gong Dai had kicked the table in front of him. The wine bottle and cup shattered, reflecting a cold light on the ground. He raised his robe and asked again, You all also think that this prince caused her death? Could it be that he was really an inauspicious person? With Gong Dai's actions, who would dare to talk to him? His temperament was obviously unstable. Coupled with the provocation from others, he was like a furious beast. What a tough life. Today, he would probably die here. What are you talking about? A male voice suddenly sounded. Gong Dai's somewhat red eyes swept over. The person who came was stunned. He paused and then said with some annoyance, Look at yourself. Every time Gong Yimo talked about you, it was as if you were the one and only existence in the world. In the end, we still haven't found her body. Are you about to go crazy? The person who came was travel-worn. It was actually Shun Shiyi. After Gong Ju declared his sovereignty, it wasn't long before he went to the border to temper himself. He didn't expect that by the time he returned, everything had changed. Originally, he wanted to find Gong Ju and have a good talk. Why couldn't he even protect a person? But seeing Gong Dai's appearance, he did not have the mood to argue. Gong Yimo, that fellow, valued him so much. If he was really crazy and she was still alive, how sad would she be? Gong Ju stood on the stage and looked down at Shun Shiyi. Shun Shiyi appeared in front of him with a bag on his back. I don't know why you're acting like a madman, and I don't care, but I do know that if Gong Yimo sees you like this, she'll blame herself. Shunsha wise ts tus the saints tus. Everyone present was kneeling, but they were extremely grateful for Shun Shiyi's appearance. They could clearly feel that they had escaped a calamity. Do you think she's still alive? It was a cold and indifferent voice, but there was an undetectable fear in it. Shun Shiyi could hear the uneasiness in his voice. He was too scared. Everyone had unintentionally revealed an attitude that Gong Yimo was dead. If she was still alive, it was impossible for her to not appear for so long. Over time, he was really too scared. He was so scared that he could not control himself. He was so scared that he wanted everyone to be buried with her. It was as if she had disappeared, and all the colors had died with her. He was scared. She's alive, Shun Shiyi said very firmly. His face was like jade, and it was rare for him to be so serious. She hasn't appeared. Maybe she's trapped by something, or maybe she's unconscious. But I know she's waiting for you. Gong Dai seemed to die. His heart trembled and thumped. It had been a long time since he heard his own heartbeat. She was still alive. She was waiting for him. He did not know why, but Gong Dai suddenly wanted to see her so badly. She must be alive. Shun Shiyi saw that the crisis was over, and his heart trembled. In fact, he was also scared just now. At this moment, even if Gong Dai did nothing, it was scary, let alone when he was angry. He pretended to be relaxed and said, "Don't push me too hard. Do you have time? Let's go for a drink together." At this moment, Gong Dai finally calmed down. He glanced at Shun Shiyi. No wonder the royal sister helped him before. He was indeed a person who was not so annoying. But he did not have time to drink. His subordinates could not find her, so he decided to find her himself. Although he could get news from all directions the fastest if he stayed in the capital, he did not want to wait. No matter what, as long as she was still alive, he would definitely find her. Gong Yimo sneezed. It could not be helped. She had caught a cold. After being pregnant, she became greedy and sleepy, and her body seemed to be not as good as before. The weather suddenly changed last night, and the next day, as expected, she fell sick. Qiu Xingfeng carried her carefully. Now that they were in the wilderness, they did not have to worry too much. "How's your injury?" Qiu Xingfeng asked softly. Gong Yimo looked at the gloomy sky and closed her eyes to catch up on sleep. "It's much better now. It's already scabbed." Qiu Xingfeng nodded blankly. After a while, he asked again. "Are you still dizzy?" Gong Yimo said drowsily, "The medicine is working. I'm not dizzy anymore. I'm just a little sleepy." "Oh right, master, where are we going?" Qiu Xingfeng did not have any idea. "Soon, it seems to be Yi country." Yi country was a small country in the border area between Daiyu State, Yuheng, and Lu Yi. It was a very mysterious small country in the mountains and forests. Its area was only equivalent to a city in Daiyu State. "Why are we going to Yi country?" Qiu Xingfeng suddenly sweated profusely, because the whole Daiyu State was crazily looking for her. He had a feeling that if Gong Dai found his sister, he would be killed by Gong Dai. Gong Dai was using the whole country to find her. "I heard that. Yi country is aloof from worldly affairs. It's very suitable for nurturing babies." "Oh." Gong Yimo did not ask anymore. She lay on his back and fell asleep. Recently, she had been dreaming about strange things. She dreamed about another person's life. It was a girl who raised a boy and depended on each other. Her dreams were very coherent and the content was super realistic. It was like watching a play. But the girl and the boy's faces could not be seen clearly. Well, it was just a dream. How could it be so detailed? Sometimes at night, she felt that someone was calling her name. But when she woke up, she only felt bitter in her heart. But she could not see the person who called her name. Was pregnancy always so scary? She could only catch up on sleep during the day. Luckily, Qiu Xingfeng was very obedient. Sometimes, she felt that Qiu Xingfeng was strangely obedient. Just like that, the two of them arrived at the Yi Kingdom while their minds were in a mess. This country was very mysterious. It was really in a forest and aloof from worldly affairs. Chapter 638. Then, Gong Yimo started the first stage of pregnancy, which was very uncomfortable. She basically vomited whatever she ate. She was only 2 months pregnant, but she already felt like giving birth to the baby. Waking up in the morning was the most uncomfortable. She wanted to vomit as soon as she opened her eyes. Her stomach felt like scratching her heart and lungs. It was super uncomfortable. She felt better after eating, but she became very picky. She didn't feel anything at first, but after eating, she had a reaction. Maybe it was because the baby didn't like it, so she had to vomit again. Finally, after another round of vomiting, Gong Yimo grabbed Qiu Xingfeng's hand with a pale face. "How about aborting the baby?" It was too painful. Qiu Xingfeng was in a dilemma. "Aborting the baby will hurt your vitality." Gong Yimo touched her face and wailed, "I don't think I can see the sun tomorrow if I don't abort it." Qiu Xingfeng wasn't a man of principle. "Zhenliu?" Gong Yimo suddenly felt nauseous. She gritted her teeth and said, "Yeah, it's better to get it over with." But the next day, Cho Xingfeng really brought her a bowl of abortion medicine. Gong Yimo, Cho Xingfeng? She was the one who wanted to abort the baby. What was wrong with him bringing the medicine? Why did she look at him with such a fierce look? Well, didn't you want to abort it? Gong Yimo threw a pillow at him. Scumbag. You just don't want to take responsibility. Cho Xingfeng widened his eyes. He was wronged. He was just following her orders. He looked like an innocent rabbit in his white clothes. He pouted and defended himself in a low voice. You were the one who wanted this. Why don't you die if I want you to? Gong Yimo glared at him. She vomited whatever she ate. She was just saying it out of anger. This guy really wanted her to abort it. Gong Yimo couldn't help but feel annoyed about her future life. The baby wouldn't be smart if it had such a father. Should she find a smart father for the baby? Cho Xingfeng felt wronged by Gong Yimo, but he didn't dare to fight back. Then what do you want? Gong Yimo slapped herself on the forehead. Why was she being so calculative with a child? He didn't know anything. Hurry up and help me up. Yes. Cho Xingfeng instinctively turned into a waiter. He put the bowl on the table and helped Gong Yimo up. It couldn't be helped. Cho Xingfeng had already gotten used to the training along the way. When Gong Yimo saw that he was so obedient, she felt as if she had punched cotton. She couldn't speak of her bitterness. Actually, she was just angry and wanted someone to quarrel with her. But when it came to Cho Xingfeng, he was always the one who got bullied. She didn't have any interest in torturing him. Gong Yimo said uninterestedly, I want to go out and see if there's anything good to eat. Help me out. Oh. Cho Xingfeng supported her like a little wife. No matter how bad-tempered Gong Yimo was, she couldn't do anything to Cho Xingfeng, who was good-tempered. She decided to let him go. The two walked down the street. It was dinner time. Many restaurants emitted the aroma of food. Gong Yimo wanted to vomit again when she smelled it. At this moment, she suddenly saw a notice on the very conspicuous sign. The reason why she stopped was not because of anything else, but because there was a woman drawn on it that resembled her. Gong Yimo was in disguise now. She didn't forget that she had an unknown enemy. But the person who posted the notice was really generous. It was said that if you found this woman, you would be rewarded 100,000 gold. That was 100,000 gold. Smelting technology was low these days. Even Yi Kingdom couldn't gather so much gold. She suddenly felt a little panicked. This woman couldn't really be her, right? Her enemy's background was so big. What's wrong? Cho Xingfeng walked over and asked her. Gong Yimo pointed at the notice uneasily and said, What should I do? I don't think it's safe to stay in Yi Kingdom. My enemy seems to be here. Cho Xingfeng took a look. She does look like you. Then what should we do? The two looked at each other. Cho Xingfeng scratched his head awkwardly. Should we go to another kingdom? Gong Yimo nodded. Well, let's not waste time. Let's go. Cho Xingfeng didn't waste time. The two didn't even eat and directly left Yi Kingdom. What they didn't know was that 2 hours after they left, the inn they stayed at was already surrounded by a large number of garrisons. The king of Yi country stood on the side, trembling. He really didn't understand how he had provoked this great god. Gong Dai's fingertips gently slid across the table. There was a bowl of cold medicine on the table. Other than that, there was nothing special about this room. He walked to the bed. There was a moldy smell on the bed. But there was also a light, sweet fragrance. He couldn't be wrong. This was the smell of royal sister. He didn't have any expression on his face, but his tightly closed lips were trembling slightly. Maybe it was because he took it too seriously. He couldn't be sure if this was the smell of royal sister. Maybe it was just another person with the same smell. He was hesitant. But for the first time, he was so sure that she was still alive. His baby was still alive. Gong Dai's fingers slowly rubbed the bedsheet. Did she sleep on this bed before? If he had arrived 2 hours earlier, would he have been able to see the lovely person that he had been thinking about day and night? The monarch of Yi Kingdom saw that Gong Dai didn't speak, so he asked in a trembling voice. I wonder why the Prince Regent is here. Before he finished, a one-armed man glared at him fiercely. He didn't dare to speak at once. Yi Kingdom was a vassal state of Dai Yu State. The Prince Regent was the ruler of Dai Yu State. He didn't dare to offend him. Lo Qi glanced at his monarch. He seemed to have fallen into some kind of illusion. He maintained a motionless posture. A few days ago, an informant found out that in Yi Kingdom, someone had seen a man with a red bloodstone around his neck. Although it was just a quick glance, the man had put the stone back into his collar. But that red color was the only one in the world. When he was bragging to his companions, the informant happened to hear it. He didn't pay attention to it before. Later, he thought of something and hurriedly reported it to the Prince Regent. He didn't expect that the Prince Regent would arrive in just a few days. Recently, many people had provided false clues for the bounty, but this was the first time someone had heard of the red bloodstone. It was because it was unexpected that this news was particularly reliable. As soon as Gong Dai arrived, he immediately sealed off the entrance and exit of the entire Yi Kingdom. The monarch thought that Dai Yu State was going to annex his country and hurriedly rushed over. Unfortunately, Gong Dai was a step too late. The medicine had already cooled down. He couldn't be blamed. There were hundreds of large and small inns in Yi Kingdom. Gong Dai moved very quickly. He directly borrowed manpower from the monarch of Yi Kingdom and searched one by one. It took him 6 hours to find this house. The waiter of the inn said that a man was staying in this house, but he seemed to have eaten something bad and kept vomiting. Once, he saw a red pendant fall out of the man's neck when he retched. The color was so beautiful that he couldn't help but take another look. Chapter 639. The relevant personnel were brought in one by one. Lo Qi saw that the prince was still silent, so he asked for him. Who was the one who reported the news? A person who looked like a waiter timidly stood out. It was me. Lo Qi looked at him from head to toe, which made him even more frightened. There was no other way. Gong Dai and the others were very powerful, so it was normal that he couldn't stand it. Repeat what you saw. The waiter quickly said, Hey. He had heard from the boss that these were all big shots from DAU. He had to be careful. About the afternoon before yesterday, 2 brothers came. The older brother was a bit honest, and the younger brother was very grumpy. They asked for 2 rooms. You said they lived in separate rooms? The waiter was stunned. After a while, he realized that the person who asked him was the nobleman. He quickly answered respectfully. Replying to Daran, they slept in separate rooms. The deterrent aura that had been lingering in the room seemed to dissipate a lot with his answer. Lo Qi saw that the prince didn't speak, so he continued to ask. What do they look like? Where are they now? The waiter replied, The older brother is very handsome and likes to wear white clothes. The younger brother wore a navy blue robe when he went out today. They said that they were going out for a walk and to eat. The waiter said some characteristics. Although they didn't look like the princess, Lo Qi still remembered them one by one. Then he asked Xiao Qi to go out and find them. Go along the main street and find a place with a lot of food. Although they sealed the city gate, they couldn't just wait here, right? Luo Xiaoqi followed the order and went out. Gong Dai finally woke up from the fact that the royal sister might still be alive. He lovingly stroked the bed, hoping that the royal sister really slept on it. But if it was really her, and she wasn't threatened, why didn't she come to find him? Gong Dai couldn't help but look at the waiter. The waiter trembled and lowered his head. What else? It's about the owner of this room. The waiter muttered in his heart. There was a man living in this room. Why was the nobleman so nervous? Could it be a relative? However, he still quickly said, The young master who lives in this house has a bad temper. This lowly one often hears him ordering his elder brother around. Then, this young master often vomits. Every time he vomits, his temper becomes even worse. Vomit. Gong Dai's heart suddenly became fervent. If that man was royal sister, then her symptoms meant that their child was still alive. Still alive. Gong Dai's eyes lit up again. Continue. The waiter couldn't figure out the noble's thoughts and said, That's right. His older brother borrowed the kitchen to brew medicine for his younger brother today. He looked at the medicine bowl on the table and said with some puzzlement. Hey, why don't you drink it? Gong Dai glanced at Lo Chi. Lo Chi quickly sent one of his subordinates who knew medicine to check. That person was still a little apprehensive. He was afraid that his ability was limited. He wanted to ask the waiter for the dregs of the medicine. However, when he sniffed it, he found that there was no need. Because this medicine was too distinguishable. His heart was filled with tears. With this medicine, he was 80% sure that the person who lived here was not a man. His vomiting was not because he ate something bad. However, if he said the name of this medicine, would the prince chop him to death? Seeing the waiter's strange expression, Gong Dai seemed to have sensed something and asked coldly, "What medicine?" His voice deepened. This 20-something-year-old waiter trembled. If he stuck out his head, he would be chopped off. He threw caution to the wind. Therefore, under Gong Dai's increasingly serious gaze, he knelt down on one knee, replying to the prince, "This is abortion medicine." Bang! This was the sound of Gong Dai hitting the bed. The entire room was filled with a murderous aura. Everyone quickly knelt down, including the king of Yi country. After a long time, Gong Dai faintly looked over. The king of Yi country trembled. Because he felt that the regent's gaze fell on him. "Didn't you ask why this prince is here?" Gong Dai gently stroked the bed sheet. His ghostly voice sounded. "The person who lives here is the princess with the highest status in Dai Yu country. She is this prince's princess. The child in her stomach is this prince's child. If anything happens to her in Yi country, or if anything happens to this prince's child, your small country will be wiped off the map." When the king of Yi country heard this, he raised his head in fear and trepidation. "I beg the prince to be merciful." His head was covered in cold sweat. He opened his eyes wide and swore, "Nothing will happen to the princess in this small country. This prince will do his best to cooperate with the prince to search for her. Please rest assured, prince. As long as she is in Yi country, this prince will." Gong Dai didn't have time to listen to his swearing. He quickly ordered, "The whole country is under martial law. Everyone is to return home. This prince wants to see the person who lives in this room. Immediately. Yes, yes, yes. This prince will do it now. I will go now." After saying that, the king of Yi country immediately left. Gong Dai was a little anxious. He glanced at the others in the room and ordered, "All of you go and look for her too." Yes. Soon, he was the only one left in the room. He stood up and walked around. He wanted to go out and look for her, but he was afraid that the other party would come back and miss her. But the feeling of waiting here was so unbearable. He sat back on the bed in silence. In his heart, he persuaded himself again and again. The waiter said that they just went out to eat and might be back soon. If he waited here, he might be able to see her soon. Gong Dai took off his shoes and lay on the bed. He was a clean freak. Who knows how many people have slept on this kind of bed? But now, when he hugged the quilt that had her scent, he suddenly felt strangely peaceful. Fear occasionally flashed through his mind. What if the person who lived here was a woman and not his royal sister? Then he thought, what if she didn't come back and his men couldn't find her? If it was really his royal sister, she wouldn't hide from her. She wouldn't hurt their child either. And that man, he could see that the man was very accommodating to her. Who was that man? Gong Ju clutched the quilt tightly. Sometimes he tensed up, sometimes he relaxed. Her scent was pervasive. Gong Ju took a deep breath and finally calmed down. Her scent made him feel peaceful and happy. The fatigue from running around for days came. He actually fell asleep on her bed without knowing. Well, he hadn't closed his eyes for several nights. Gong Dai only slept for 2 hours. When he woke up and didn't see anyone, he frowned and became anxious. At this time, Luo Qi returned, but he also brought bad news. "Your Highness, someone at the East City Gate said that they saw these 2 people, but they left 4 hours ago." Chapter 640. In other words, they only missed each other for 2 hours. Gong Dai was so depressed that he almost spat out blood. But he held it back. But his face was so gloomy. "Did you ask where they went?" "They seem to be going to Yuheng." Gong Dai got up quickly. "Gather the men, let's chase them. Yes. When Gong Dai was leaving, he thought of something and turned around. He looked at the room again, and pain flashed in his eyes. If it was really you, why did you run away? He carefully closed the door. This room, this bed, the two of them had slept in it before. The moment he closed the door, a light flashed in his eyes. No matter where you run to, I will find you no matter what, Imperial Sister. And this trip was not a complete waste. At least he was 80% sure that the Royal Sister was still alive. This was the best news. Gong Yimo suddenly held her stomach and screamed, "Master, Master, my stomach hurts." They were on their way. Qiu Xingfeng felt her pulse nervously and said awkwardly, "It seems that there is something wrong with your spleen and stomach. You haven't been eating well recently. What should I do?" Gong Yimo looked at him with her big eyes pitifully. Qiu Xingfeng couldn't stand it when she showed this expression. She was bad and often scolded him, but every time she showed a weak and pitiful look, Qiu Xingfeng just wanted to comfort her gently. She didn't know what was wrong with him. "I don't have any medicine with me. Let's not go to Yuheng. Let's go to the north. There is a small country not far from there. We only need half a day to get there. There should be enough medicine there." Gong Yimo said bitterly, "Half a day, then?" Qiu Xingfeng scratched his head. Then he walked to Gong Yimo and squatted down. "Come, let me carry you. It should take 2 hours if we use lightness skill." Gong Yimo was a little embarrassed, but she did not hesitate and climbed onto his back. After all, this child was his. At first, Gong Yimo still had doubts. But that night, the master came to admit it himself. He said that the child was his and that he would treat her well. So, he asked for it. Humph. However, Gong Yimo couldn't help but mutter when she smelled the clean scent on his body. "Master, you're the best." In the past, she had always been the one taking care of him on Mount Yunding, but now it seemed that it was the other way around. He was always learning to take care of her. Although he was clumsy, he was also very considerate. Qiu Xingfeng smiled and didn't say anything. He carried her on his back and ran. His speed was not fast, but it was very stable. It was obvious that he was taking care of Gong Yimo. With the slight bumps, Gong Yimo's stomach did not hurt as much. She leaned against his back and slept. Feeling that the woman on his back was breathing steadily, Chuk Xingfeng actually felt that it was a good feeling. In the past, when he took care of his little disciple, she would never say thank you or be grateful. It was as if what he did was right and proper. Of course, it was also right and proper for a master to take care of his disciple. But she was different. She would thank him for everything he did and would acknowledge his efforts. Although she was fierce, she would definitely be the first to stand up for him when he was bullied by others. Previously, someone saw that he was gullible and wanted to extort money from him. He gave all his money to them, but they did not let him go and forced him to hand over more money. In the end, Gong Yimo saw it. Although she had no internal energy, she still came up and kicked him. Chuk Xingfeng covered his face. "They don't know martial arts. We, who practice martial arts, are supposed to help the weak. How can we bully the common people?" Gong Yimo said indifferently, "It's okay. I don't know martial arts either. I'm a woman. What strength can I have?" After that, she stepped on his back fiercely. Her expression became ferocious. "Give me all my money." The man had never seen such a fierce person. Not only was he beaten up, he quickly took out all his money. Gong Yimo did not even look at it and said, "It's too little. If I don't teach you a lesson, you won't be honest, right?" The blackmailer naturally understood what Gong Yimo meant. As he wailed, he reluctantly handed over his money bag to her. "Master, this is all my money. I really don't have any more." Gong Yimo only let him go. Seeing him get up, she still kicked him. "Get lost. You dare to bully my people. I think you're too daring." The man quickly ran away. He would probably take a detour when he saw them in the future. After bullying him, Gong Yimo even scolded Chuk Xingfeng. Someone who did not know martial arts could bully him. He was a disgrace to Yunding Mountain and so on. He was so weak, but he was her master. She felt ashamed of herself. In short, she forced Chuk Xingfeng to agree. If anyone bullied him in the future, She would not beat them up. Chuck Feng lowered his head to listen to the scolding, but he suddenly felt that she was actually quite good. Because they used Qinggong, their speed was very fast. They shuttled through the forest. Under the warm sunlight, Gong Yimo's face was pink. She slept peacefully, and the years were peaceful. Sometimes, not remembering anything was also a kind of happiness. Chuck Feng smiled. He actually knew that others called him a fool. Even his former disciple would occasionally say, "You're a fool." Gong Yimo had never said such words to him before. She was unusually patient with him. Sometimes when he encountered something he didn't know how to do and was a little discouraged, she would smile and say, "Don't worry, you haven't grown up yet." But he was 30 years older. Did he really not grow up? Chuck Feng knew that he was a fool. He was also very sad. But in front of her, she had always treated him like a normal person and guided him. Sometimes, she forced him to buy things and watched him laboriously count the copper coins one by one. Sometimes, she forced him to bargain with others. She never got tired of watching from the side. But there was no malice in her eyes. She was encouraging him. He could feel it. So in the beginning, perhaps because of the child, he wanted to take care of her and learn not to hate her. But later on, after interacting with her for a long time, he realized that he really could not hate her. She was like his family, or his little disciple who depended on each other. Perhaps she really was his disciple. Otherwise, why would she always call him master? Maybe he was stupid and forgot about it. On this side, they were happy and harmonious, but on the other side, dark clouds were gathering. Gong Ju felt like he was about to go crazy when the girl escaped right under his nose. A group of people rushed on the official road. They were all dressed in black and looked stern. Like an unsheathed sword, the horse's hooves flew as it swiftly galloped towards Yuheng. Along the way, Gong Dai would occasionally stop and ask if they had seen those two people. The people who were rushing on the road were intimidated by Gong Dai and the others' aura. They all shook their heads and said that they had not seen them. Gong Dai was a little irritated as he whipped his horse. He looked around in the wilderness and actually felt lost. "Royal sister, where are you? Where are you?" Chapter 641. Gong Yimo stood in front of the tall city gate and pointed with some effort. "Lotus Kingdom?" There was actually such a kingdom in the depths of the forest. How interesting. Qiu Xingfeng looked at the map. Lotus Kingdom has only been established for more than 10 years, so not many people know about it. Whatever Tilda, let's go in and take a look. "I'm starving," Gong Yimo said and pulled Qiu Xingfeng towards the city gate. Who knew that the guards would stop them? "Who are you?" Gong Yimo looked at them in confusion. "We are passers-by. We saw that there is a city here and wanted to go in and rest." Hearing this, the gatekeeper looked at them with vigilance and said coldly, "Don't worry. Lotus Kingdom does not allow outsiders to enter. Leave." Hey! Gong Yimo was stunned. Qiu Xingfeng said to Gong Yimo when he heard that outsiders were not welcome here and didn't want to cause any more trouble. "In that case, let's go. Why should we go?" Gong Yimo was a little angry. Qiu Xingfeng was sweating profusely. Was it easy for him to get here? Since they didn't welcome outsiders, why did they mark it on the map? Wasn't this bullying? "We're just going in to rest, eat something, and leave. Why don't you let us in?" The guards were a little impatient. "I advise you not to refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Hurry up and leave." Their unfriendly attitude angered Gong Yimo. Did they think that they were easy to bully because they had fewer people? "Hey, interesting." Gong Yimo put her hands on her hips. "So what if I want to be forced to drink a forfeit?" Seeing that someone wanted to cause trouble, the guards didn't hold back and a few people rushed up. Seeing that they were about to fight, Gong Yimo consciously hid behind Qiu Xingfeng. She didn't forget that she was still in a state where she had lost all her martial art. Qiu Xingfeng instinctively stood in front of Gong Yimo. Although he was kind, he definitely couldn't watch Gong Yimo get bullied. Just as a fight was about to break out, a dignified female voice sounded. "What's going on?" A luxurious carriage appeared at the city gate. It should have just returned. The woman in the lead lifted the curtain. Gong Yimo saw that there were many people in the carriage. They all looked malnourished and were curled up in the carriage. Third elder, this person is trying to force his way in. The guard pointed at Gong Yimo and said. Gong Yimo was not convinced. The people in the carriage are obviously not your people. Why can they go in but I can't? The young woman called third elder threw a disdainful glance at Gong Yimo. Drive them away. It's a special period now. We have to be on guard. Yes. Gong Yimo was furious, but this was someone else's territory. She couldn't really let her master do it. After all, her master hated fighting the most. It was just that the other party was behaving suspiciously, so she couldn't help but mock him. I'm giving you face by going in. Mph, look at how secretive you are. Are you harboring criminals? Maybe this is a thief's den. After saying that, the other party's expression changed. Especially the woman, her expression was terrifyingly gloomy. Gong Yimo's heart skipped a beat. Oh no, she seemed to have stirred up a hornet's nest. Since you know this is a thief's den, don't leave. Capture her. The female elder said in a gloomy tone. She waved her hand and the guards behind the carriage all drew their swords and rushed over. Qiu Xingfeng quickly stood in front of Gong Yimo and fought with the people sent out by the other party, but Qiu Xingfeng was already at the sixth realm. Those people were no match for him. He didn't hurt them and only knocked them out. Miss, we're not going in. Why do you have to fight? The woman glanced at Qiu Xingfeng. She was very wary of his martial arts. Therefore, she didn't answer Qiu Xingfeng. She only whistled and the tightly shut door suddenly opened. Hundreds of guards rushed out and surrounded them. Gong Yimo's heart skipped a beat. If she had known, she wouldn't have said such a thing. This place might really be harboring criminals. They suspected that they were spies and wanted to capture them. Qiu Xingfeng's expression became serious. There were so many people. It would take some effort. But Gong Yimo found that the guards surrounding her were all tense, as if they were facing a great enemy. But they were really just passing by. It could only be said that they really had secrets. Hide behind me later. You'll be fine. Qiu Xingfeng comforted her. These people were still no match for him. It was just that there were too many people. He couldn't help but remind Gong Yimo. Gong Yimo nodded. The moment the other party rushed over, she used her nimble movements to hide behind Qiu Xingfeng. Qiu Xingfeng was surprised to find that Gong Yimo cooperated well with him. She was familiar with his every move, as if she knew his habits and what he would do next. Even in a fight, she didn't cause any trouble for him. He couldn't help but smile. He suddenly felt that it wasn't bad to have such a disciple. In the chaos, the hundreds of guards were no match for Qiu Xingfeng. Not long later, many people fainted on the ground. The female elder was anxious. She pulled out her sword and prepared to rush forward. At this moment, the door opened again. A gorgeous carriage appeared. A man and a woman sat on it. The man was calm and handsome, while the woman was charming. When they appeared, the people of Lian Kingdom who were still standing in front of the door all knelt down. Greetings to King and Queen. What's going on? The King of Lian Kingdom stood up. He smiled and looked around. Finally, his gaze landed on Gong Yimo and Qiu Xingfeng. There are guests from afar. We should treat them with respect. Why did you fight? Gong Yimo sized up the king of this small kingdom. She had to admit that he was very handsome. That kind of faint elegance made him look like a teacher. But because they fought as soon as they arrived, she didn't have a good impression of the people of Lian Kingdom. It's fine. It's fine if you don't welcome us. We don't want to go in either. Let's part ways here. She was starving. If she had known that the people in this place were strange, she would have endured the pain and gone directly to Yuheng. She wanted to leave, but the crowd stopped her. The elegant man wanted to let them go, but a gentle female voice suddenly sounded. Wait. The king of Shui Kingdom looked at his wife. That elegant and charming woman stood up and stared at Gong Yimo. She said with some confusion. Who are you? Where did the thing on your neck come from? Gong Yimo touched her neck in confusion. That strange red stone wasn't exposed. How did the other party know that she had something on her neck? That woman walked down the carriage step by step and walked towards Gong Yimo. She was very beautiful. That kind of beauty was like a fairy, as if she was untainted by the mortal world. But her eyes were very sharp. She stared straight at Gong Yimo, as if she wanted to see into her heart. What does it have to do with you? Chapter 642. Gong Yimo retorted unhappily, but the people around her reacted strongly. Don't be rude to the queen. The female elder even pulled out her sword, as if it was too much for her to be rude to the queen. The queen looked at her face carefully. Her disciple said softly, "Did you disguise yourself?" Gong Yimo immediately became alert. She had enemies. What did this woman want to do? But when she looked carefully, she felt that this woman looked familiar. Did she see her before she lost her memory? Seeing that she didn't answer, the queen frowned. Suddenly, she smelled the sweet smell on Gong Yimo. She blinked and suddenly grabbed her shoulder. He asked in a slightly fast tone, "This smell, it can't be wrong. Who are you? Why is the stone heart with you?" Gong Yimo was baffled. How could she know why this stone was in her possession? It was because it looked so special that she kept it. Does this woman have X-ray vision? Before she could say anything, Qiu Xingfeng pulled her behind him and said to the queen, "She has a child. Don't scare her." Gong Yimo's eyes widened. She was in the appearance of a man, okay? You can't trick your teammate like this, master. But the queen didn't seem surprised. She looked hesitant. She blinked charmingly and looked at Qiu Xingfeng. "Her child is yours." Qiu Xingfeng nodded quickly, "Yes." "Then you can't leave." Gong Yimo and Qiu Xingfeng widened their eyes. "Why?" The queen raised her chin with a smile. "Because she is my daughter." Gong Yimo's mouth twitched. "My mother died long ago." The queen glanced at her elegantly and said proudly, "How could I be poisoned to death? I just wanted to get away from Daiyu State." "Gong Yimo, I am your mother. How dare you not recognize me?" Gong Yimo was annoyed. She was wondering why she looked familiar. It turned out that the queen looked like her, but why did she suddenly have a mother? She felt that she didn't have a good impression of this mother. "I already said that my mother is dead. If you know what's good for you, let us go quickly. Otherwise, I'll burn down your lousy place." Gong Yimo threatened with an unfriendly expression. The Lotus Kingdom was in the middle of a forest, and a fire could really start burning. The queen was angered by her and looked shocked and aggrieved. "I gave birth to you. Why don't you recognize me?" Gong Yimo didn't want to be entangled with him anymore. She pulled Qiu Xingfeng aside and said coldly, "If you marry a man, you have to follow him. I have his child, so I'm his woman. It's none of your business." Just as the queen was about to say something, the elegant man also walked down. What happened? The queen turned her head and said to the man with a headache, "Lang Jun, my daughter doesn't want to acknowledge me. She even yelled at me, 'Who is your daughter?'" Gong Yimo said reflexively. She always felt that this woman was strange. She suddenly ran out and said that she was her mother. There must be a conspiracy. She wasn't going to play along, so she secretly pulled Qiu Xingfeng aside and prepared to slip away. Unexpectedly, the elegant man heard her and said something in surprise. "Gong Yimo? Hasn't the Prince Regent been looking for her?" His eyes fell on Gong Yimo. "Aren't you in Daiyu State? What are you doing here?" He seemed to be very puzzled. Gong Yimo's hair stood on end. So her enemy was the Prince Regent. Thinking of those terrible scars on her body, Gong Yimo swallowed and said quickly, "No comment." Then she pulled Qiu Xingfeng, who was also in a daze, and prepared to escape. The elegant man frowned. Then his eyes flashed and he said something tentatively. "The Prince Regent's power has spread all over the 4 countries. If you leave here, you might fall into his hands soon." Gong Yimo stopped when she heard that. This man seemed to be implying something. She thought for a while and turned back. Then she saw the other party smile kindly. Most of the surrounding small countries are vassal states of the 4 countries. As for you, no matter which country you go to, someone will report to the Prince Regent. But it's different in the Lotus country. He smiled with curved eyes. The Lotus country is small and doesn't belong to any country. If you're here, the Prince Regent won't be able to find you." With that, he waved his hand and gestured for them to enter. "The two of you are travel-worn. Do you really not want to consider coming in?" Gong Yimo swallowed. She suddenly felt that she was being targeted by a big bad wolf. This man saw that she didn't like the Prince Regent, so he used the Prince Regent to threaten her. She had no choice but to be fooled. And there was also a strange mother. Why did she feel that it was so dangerous? But when she thought of the Prince Regent, she was terrified. She didn't know where the Prince Regent came from. How did she offend him? He even knew that the Prince Regent was looking for her in such a small place. He even used this to threaten her. So she had no choice. Even if she was unwilling, Gong Yimo still entered the Lotus country with Qiu Xingfeng after some consideration. The other party seemed to know a lot of things. She might be able to find out more if she stayed. After entering the Lotus country, Gong Yimo was a little surprised. This place was much more prosperous than the Yi country. The streets were neat and prosperous, and there was a variety of goods. It was really not easy to have such a territory in the forest. What was even more difficult was that all the people respected the king and queen very much. That kind of love and respect was as if they were their saviors. But the king and queen sitting in the sedan had a very serious expression. The queen grabbed the king's hand with some difficulty. "What should we do, Fu Ya?" The king of the Lotus country, who was Fu Ya, patted her shoulder lightly. "This is a good thing. Lian, with her here, even if the Prince Regent finds this place, I'm afraid he won't massacre the country because of her." The queen, who was Lian, felt that something was wrong. "I think so too. She seems to have lost her memory. This is easier to control. But what if she recovers her memory? She ended up like this because of the Snow Clan. She definitely has no good feelings towards the Snow Clan. When she remembers, she probably won't object if the Prince Regent wants to massacre the country. But now there is no place for the Snow Clan in the 4 countries. Are we going to destroy the shelter that we built with great difficulty? The situation hasn't reached that stage yet." Fu Ya comforted her. A light flashed through his eyes. Letting her stay is definitely the right thing to do. In this period of time, you should treat her well. Let her know that there are good people in the Snow Country. When the Prince Regent really comes, she might plead for us. At the end, his expression was a little cold. If it doesn't work, we can capture her to threaten the Prince Regent. This can also give us a chance to escape. Lian felt uneasy. "I don't want that," she sighed in Fu Ya's arms. "She's my child after all. I thought we would never meet. I didn't expect to see her." Fu Ya smiled gently. "Your child is my child. Don't worry, it won't be the last step." Chapter 643. Gong Yimo began to nurture her baby in Lian Kingdom. At first, she thought that the people of Lian Kingdom were plotting something, but as time passed, she realized that nothing was wrong. Not only did the king and queen not cause trouble for her, they even treated her well. Especially Lian. At first, it was a little awkward, but later on, perhaps because blood was thicker than water, she was able to calm down and have a chat with her. But she would not call her mother. She and Qiu Xingfeng called her Aunt Lian. The people here were also very gentle, just like a paradise. There were no evil people, and everyone was very content and energetic. Therefore, Gong Yimo admired her cheap stepfather, Fu Ya. But what was strange was that they would bring in many people every once in a while. Those people were like refugees, and looked very pitiful. But Lian did not tell her, so Gong Yimo did not care. In this way, a month passed, and Gong Yimo's belly began to show signs of pregnancy. She touched her belly and thought to herself, "The people here are very nice. It's not bad to give birth to a child here." But recently, she kept having nightmares. She dreamed that she became a female general and killed everyone. She also dreamed that she became a princess and the 4 kingdoms came to congratulate her. It was a completely different scene, but it was so real, as if it really happened. At this time, she was eating noodles in a noodle shop. Yongchun noodles were something that one would never get tired of. Qiu Xingfeng was eating steamed buns. This kind of peaceful life was very suitable for a simple creature like Qiu Xingfeng. At this time, the street was bustling. Gong Yimo looked through the window. It turned out that people were brought in from outside. Just then, the waiter came to serve the dishes. Gong Yimo said casually, "They are so pitiful. It seems like they have suffered a lot." When the waiter heard this, he immediately opened his mouth and sighed. "Isn't that so? Now that there are 4 kingdoms, where can we go? I don't know why the regent went crazy. As long as they are not willing to merge and change their surname, they are killed without mercy. The other 3 countries didn't reject the Snow Clan before, but now they're killing them too. Just because some of them are doing evil doesn't mean they're all bad. What a sin." As he spoke, he prepared to leave. Gong Yimo pulled him back and asked curiously, "Why is the regent doing this? Is there no one who can control him? And hadn't the Snow Clan been destroyed a long time ago? Could it be that everyone in the Lotus Kingdom was from the Snow Clan?" Gong Yimo didn't care about it, but she was curious about it. The waiter sighed again. "I can tell that you rarely leave the Lotus country, right?" Little did they know how serious the situation outside was. The Prince Regent directly appointed his 8-year-old foolish younger brother as the Emperor of Daiyu State, and he became the Prince Regent. Not only did he have great power, but he also had trade relations with the 4 countries. His power was monstrous. As long as it was something he wanted to do, there was nothing he couldn't do. But I heard that he wasn't such a cruel person before. I heard that it was because of his sister's death. Everyone said that his sister was killed by the Snow Clan, and that's why the Snow Clan suffered. Gong Yimo shook her head. Just one person's death, and so many people have to die with her. It's really, isn't it? The waiter sighed. A few days ago, someone saw the Prince Regent come back from Yuheng and went to the Yi country. I don't know if he's still there. If only he returned to the Daiyu state earlier. The Yi country is so close to here, it's really dangerous. The waiter didn't say much, so he left after a few words. Gong Yimo suddenly pulled Qiu Xingfeng, but she saw that Qiu Xingfeng was staring blankly at a place, as if he hadn't come back to his senses. "Hey, master." Yes. Qiu Xingfeng looked at her, but he was still thinking about what the waiter said. If Gong Dai killed Gong Yimo because of the Snow Clan, then he wouldn't kill if he knew Gong Yimo wasn't dead, right? But when he saw Gong Yimo, he was in a dilemma. Gong Dai might not kill people, but he made Gong Yimo pregnant. Gong Dai wouldn't let him go. Was it someone else's death or his own? He was in a dilemma. "Master, why are you in a daze?" Qiu Xingfeng blinked, as if he had made up his mind. He felt that he couldn't hide it anymore. Gong Dai was her brother, and she had the right to know the truth. "Gong Yimo. Actually, you are the Prince Regent's sister." Before he finished, Gong Yimo suddenly said excitedly, "Master, are you more powerful, or is the Prince Regent more powerful?" In order to prevent Gong Yimo from thinking about leaving, Shualian had been instilling in her how terrible the Prince Regent was. However, she would never have thought that because she talked too much, Gong Yimo would become interested in this legendary devil who killed without blinking an eye. Besides, Gong Yimo always thought that her master's martial arts were the best in the world, and he was a genius in martial arts. Maybe the Prince Regent was just SOSO? Qiu Xingfeng thought for a while and said, "When I was at the 5th level, he could beat me. Now that I'm at the 6th level, he must have grown up." That person was so powerful. Gong Yimo was discouraged and said, "Even if I can't beat him, I can still run away, right? I heard that this person has been looking for me. I want to meet him." That was a dangerous idea. Qiu Xingfeng opened his eyes wide, but Gong Yimo was getting more and more excited. The waiter said that someone saw him go back to the Yi Kingdom a few days ago. I don't know if he's still there. "Good master, please take me there, I promise. I'll just take a look from afar, just one look." She wanted to see if this person had 3 heads and 6 arms. He was so powerful. And he seemed to be involved in many things. He was the Prince Regent and the owner of a bank. He should be an uncle. Qiu Xingfeng couldn't dissuade her and couldn't help but agree. In his heart, He thought that it would be good if he was discovered. If Gong Yi really wanted to kill him, wouldn't Gong Yi Mo save him? After the two of them secretly made the decision, they really set off for the Yi Kingdom. The walls of the Lian Kingdom couldn't contain Qiu Xingfeng at all. They slipped away without anyone noticing. Can we not tell Aunt Lian? Qiu Xingfeng still felt uneasy when he left. Gong Yi Mo waved her hand indifferently. Recently, she had been getting along with Xue Lian. Unconsciously, she had developed a little bit of a bond with her. However, Xue Lian was only going out to play for a while. If she were to tell her, she would definitely not agree. Just leave a letter for her. It's not like we're not coming back. Qiu Xingfeng nodded and left a few words. But what they didn't expect was that this trip was much more interesting than they imagined. Chapter 644. Xue Lian was furious that they had sneaked away. Actually, Xue Lian had very complicated feelings towards Gong Yi Mo. She had never thought that she would see her daughter again, but now that she had, she subconsciously wanted to tell her that she was her mother. But she did not acknowledge her. It was fine if she did not acknowledge her. After not seeing her for so many years, she did not think that she was a good mother. This time, she had brought her back with the intention of letting her daughter get close to the Xue clan. When she found out that Gong Yi Mo did not seem to remember anything and was still running away from the regent, she wanted to use this opportunity to rebuild the image of the Xue clan in her daughter's heart. But recently, she saw that her daughter's face was getting redder and redder. She was sleepy, greedy, and active. It reminded her of when she was little and called her mother. So she had grown up and looked like this. It was not like her personality at all. They had been separated for too long and the mother-daughter relationship had been diluted. But recently, they had spent more time together. Perhaps blood was thicker than water. She actually found the feeling of being a mother again. She did not expect Gong Yi Mo to leave just like that. It made her angry, but more than that, she was a little sad. At this time, someone found the letter that Qiu Xingfeng had blown under the table. Auntie Lian, Momo is going to see the regent. We will come back when we are done. Xue Lian did not see the letter. But when she saw it, she almost vomited blood. Did they think that the regent was a monkey? That they could see whenever they wanted? And if the regent knew that Mo was pregnant with someone else's child, he wouldn't kill Mo, right? Xue Lian was a little scared. She did not know much about the relationship between Mo and the regent because she was far away. She only knew that Mo seemed to have been poisoned by Ji Yu. Then, she was provoked by Xue Qianzhong and went crazy. That was why the regent hated the Xue clan. But these days, she found that Mo didn't show any signs of going crazy. She secretly asked Qiu Xingfeng, and Qiu Xingfeng also said that nothing had happened in these 2 months, so she felt that the rumors were wrong. And now, Mo was indeed not dead, but there was someone else by her side. It was said that the Prince Regent liked Mo very much, but the Prince Regent was cruel. If he knew that Mo had not only forgotten him, but also had a child with someone else, who knew what he would do? Speaking of which, it was also a mistake. In this era, taking the pulse could not accurately determine the month. Gong Yi Mo thought that she was only 2 months pregnant, but in fact, she was already 3 months pregnant. So when Qiu Xingfeng said that this was his child, Xue Lian did not doubt it at all. The more she thought about it, the more scared she became. Xue Lian could no longer sit still. She wanted to find her husband to discuss countermeasures. On the other side, Gong Yi Mo and Qiu Xingfeng had arrived at the Yi Kingdom. This time, it was as if they were facing a great enemy. They disguised themselves as a couple. Gong Yi Mo was really nervous. For a long time, she had been very confused about why she had lost her memory. When she woke up, she was injured all over, and she had a child. Her master had also become strange, and there was a super powerful enemy who appeared out of nowhere. In addition to those overly realistic dreams, she felt that it should be easy to get her memory back. She just needed an opportunity. So, on one hand, she really wanted to see the legendary Prince Regent. On the other hand, she wanted to try. Maybe seeing someone she knew could stimulate her brain and help her get her memory back. But she was afraid that she would accidentally lose her life, so she disguised herself very carefully this time. She was also surprised to find that there were many good things in her space, including precious medicine, silk, satin, and rare treasures. But she did not dare to take them out. She even had a suspicion that the Prince Regent wanted to catch her because she had robbed the imperial palace of Daiyu State. Then, were all the things in her space stolen? Thinking of this, she was timid and shrank beside Qiu Xingfeng, as if she was really a little wife. "Who is it?" At the door, they were stopped fiercely. Qiu Xingfeng looked like a silly villager. "We want to enter the city to sell medicine." Saying this, Gong Yimo lifted the medicine frame on her shoulder. Qiu Xingfeng also had one, and the one on her was just for show. The city guard was just about to check, but he frowned as soon as he walked in. "What's this smell?" Gong Yimo said embarrassedly. "Sir, this is dandelion grass. Although the smell is a bit strong, it's very effective for many diseases. We spent more than a month to pick this to supplement our family. Sir, please do us a favor." Under Gong Yimo's pleas, the city guard finally impatiently let her go. He even kindly reminded her of the situation. "There's a noble in the city recently. You smell so bad. Stay away from him when you see him. Otherwise, you won't even know how you died." "Hey. Thank you, sir. Thank you." Gong Yimo apologized as she led Qiu Xingfeng into the city. There was only one city in the entire Yi Kingdom. At this time, the whole city was under martial law. There were not many people on the streets. Even if there were, they were in a hurry. In the palace in the city, the king of Yi Kingdom was anxious. "King, what should we do? That person is still drinking. If this goes on, what if something bad happens to him?" Hearing this, the king of Yi Kingdom frowned. "If he wants to drink, then let him drink. Ask someone to send some good wine over. It's better to be drunk than sober. It's too scary." His subordinate nodded and wiped the sweat off his forehead. It was indeed very scary. When he came to the Yi Kingdom to look for someone, it was still okay. Although it was cold and overbearing, it was still acceptable. But this time, when the Prince Regent came back from Yuheng and came to the Yi Kingdom, the sky seemed to be dark. The whole Yi Kingdom was shrouded in dark cloud. It seemed that they didn't find the person, but it didn't have to be like this, right? His eyes seemed to be able to freeze people. It was indescribably cold. Another month passed. This month, there was no news at all. Those two people seemed to have disappeared from the world. Gong Dai ordered all his subordinates to go out and search in all directions with the Yi Kingdom as the center. Then, he wrote several letters to various countries. Even if he had to turn the whole continent upside down, he must find her. After doing all this, Xiao Qi timidly stepped forward. "Prince, you haven't slept for several days. Take a nap." Everyone followed the order and went out. Only Luo Xiaoqi and a few people stayed to take care of Gong Dai. They saw Gong Dai's desperation. But if it went on like this, the prince would fall before the princess was found. Gong Dai closed his eyes. He also found that his condition was getting worse and worse. Maybe he really should sleep, but he couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he would repeatedly ask, why didn't the royal sister come to find him? All the cities had posted notices. Didn't she see it? Then what was the reason why she didn't appear? Was the poison in her body acting up again? Was she afraid that she would hurt him again? Chapter 645. He wanted to tell her that it was okay. Even if her poison broke out, it didn't matter. He could control her. She didn't need to be afraid. Every time he closed his eyes, he would see her covered in blood and the scene of her jumping off the cliff. She was afraid of killing him, so she would rather die by herself. She was afraid that he would jump down with her and cut off the meridians in his legs. She thought about everything, but why didn't she think about how painful it would be for him to live without her? "Prince." Luo Xiaoqi saw that Gong Dai didn't answer, so he asked again. Gong Dai rubbed his forehead. Maybe he really needed a good sleep. He couldn't fall down. He still had to find her, so even if it was daytime, he still took off his clothes and untied his crown. But sitting on the edge of the bed, he was absent-minded as if he was possessed. "Bring me wine." "Huh." Luo Xiaoqi didn't come back to his senses. Gong Dai looked up. At that moment, he was sitting on the edge of the bed. His snow-white clothes and silver hair were so beautiful. But his eyes were dark and calm. It was so quiet that it made people's heart ache. I said, "Bring me wine." Luo Xiaoqi didn't dare to disobey. After a moment of hesitation, he went to find Prince Juzun of the Yi Kingdom to ask for wine. He didn't expect that he wouldn't get drunk. Luo Xiaoqi wanted to persuade him, but a wine bottle was smashed at his feet. He was startled, but before he could say anything, Gong Ju's cold words smashed down on him. "Get out." Luo Xiaoqi quickly got out. Love misleads people. He knew that the prince must be very sad. So much so that he, who had never used alcohol to drown his sorrows, actually needed alcohol to sleep one day. Now he only hoped that the prince could have a good sleep. But there was no news of the princess. As subordinates, they didn't have a good time. Every day, they felt like there was a knife on their back. When would this kind of life end? Luo Xiaoqi stayed far away in the outer hall. He put his hands together and prayed to God. He hoped that the people who went out today could bring back news of the princess. Gong Yimo climbed the wall with all her strength. "There is no one." "Master, the prince of the Yi Kingdom is too poor. He doesn't even have many guards." What she didn't know was that the prince regent had forcefully taken her away. Qiu Xingfeng leaned against the wall beside her. "We agreed that we would just take a look, Ian, I promise." Gong Yimo swore. Qiu Xingfeng sighed and carried her to the main palace. In the main palace, Gong Yimo leaned on the roof and said to Qiu Xingfeng after hearing the king and his subordinates' distress, "This Yi Kingdom's king is really useless. He's like a grandson in front of the regent." "Right, he said that the regent was drunk. It's good that he's drunk, he definitely won't notice us." Qiu Xingfeng looked at her awkwardly. "You still want to see it from a close distance?" Perhaps he could recover his memories. Gong Yimo nodded vigorously. Qiu Xingfeng, who doted on his disciple endlessly, hesitated for a while. Then he took Gong Yimo and followed the new batch of people to the Prince Regent's palace. Out of respect, the Prince Regent had many palace guards. They formed a circle and surrounded the entire palace. In this situation, unless Qiu Xingfeng forced his way in, how could he not be discovered? Gong Yimo had an idea and said, "Just wait for me here. If I call for you, come out and save me. If I don't call for you, just stay here and don't move." Qiu Xingfeng was very obedient. He nodded. "Then be careful." Then he watched as Gong Yimo knocked out a palace maid, quickly changed her clothes, and quickly chased after her. The guard stopped her. She lowered her head and held the tray in her hands. She said embarrassedly, "I just twisted my ankle." "Did the sisters go in first?" The guard looked at her ordinary appearance and couldn't remember who she was. Seeing her wobble when she walked, he believed her. "Be careful next time. There's a noble living here. If you delay and anger the noble, no one can protect you." The guard saw that Gong Yimo accepted it humbly and turned his body in satisfaction. "Go in." "Oh, thank you." After saying that, he quickly went in. As soon as she went in, she found that there were not many people in the courtyard. Well, they were all driven out by Gong Dai to look for people. Only Luo Xiaoqi and others were here. Gong Yimo walked to the main hall with her head lowered. When she was in the outer hall, she was stopped again. "Wait." Luo Xiaoqi stopped her. He looked at the ordinary woman in front of him and frowned. "Who are you? Didn't a group of people just go in to deliver wine?" Gong Yimo looked at Luo Xiaoqi and showed a silly smile. His Majesty suddenly remembered that there was some high-quality Baihua wine in the palace. He asked me to deliver it to see if it suits His Highness's taste. Luo Xiaoqi looked at the exquisite wine bottle in her hand and didn't stop her. He just muttered, "You smell so strong. Remember to stay away from His Highness later." "Yes, sir." "Go." Luo Xiaoqi waved his hand. Gong Yimo almost forgot that she still had the smell of kaipo grass. She only hoped that the regent was really drunk. Otherwise, he would catch her immediately. And that guard, he actually let her in so casually. What if she was an assassin? It seemed that the regent's people were just SOSO. But what she didn't know was that after Gong Dai reached the 8th level, he had internal strength to protect his body. That was to say, anyone who wanted to get close to him when he was unconscious would not have a good ending. So Luo Xiaoqi just reminded the group of people who just went in not to get close to His Highness. He didn't say anything else. Anyway, he was not afraid of assassins. After Gong Yimo went in, the other palace maids were coming out. She quickly hid behind the pillar. Then she heard them say with some disappointment, "I thought His Highness was awake. I didn't expect him to be drunk. Yes, it's a pity. If His Highness took a fancy to her, wouldn't the glory and wealth be at your fingertips in the future? Stop dreaming." A slightly older maid said, "Do you think the regent is for you little bitches to covet? Be careful not to lose your life one day." As soon as she spoke, the others didn't dare to speak. By the way, where is Xiaoqi? Wasn't she at the back just now? Maybe she went to slack off. That little girl is the best at slacking off. Later, I must let my aunt punish her. When they walked away, Gong Yimo came out in a panic. Fortunately, there was no one in the inner courtyard. She watched the palace maids and Luo Xiaoqi leave. Luo Xiaoqi didn't say anything. She guessed that he thought she left with those people. After all, he certainly didn't remember the number of palace maids. Hehe, this was good. She had more time. Gong Yimo walked in with some excitement. The surroundings were still dead silent. Only her flustered heartbeat could be heard. She felt that it was too smooth. It was as if God was helping her. She actually got here so smoothly. Chapter 646. Would she be able to see the legendary regent? Because she was worried that the regent would wake up, she pretended to be a palace maid and respectfully knocked on the door. "Your Highness, this servant has been ordered by His Majesty to bring you wine." Gong Yimo listened carefully. There was no sound from inside at all. Could it be that he wasn't inside? "Your Highness." She couldn't help knocking on the door. "This servant has been ordered to bring you wine." There was still no response. She suspiciously opened the door and a strong wine fragrance came out with a refreshing smell. She suddenly felt like she had smelled this smell before. But after a while, she couldn't remember anything. After coming back to her senses, she carefully closed the door and walked into the room. The wine that the palace maids had brought was respectfully placed here and there was a person lying on the bed with his back facing her. She could only see a snow-white robe and a head of silver-grey hair. This regent was actually this old? Gong Yimo's heart once again became excited. She wanted to see the other side's appearance. Perhaps she could remember something. So she slowly walked over to Gong Dai and placed the tray in her hand beside the bed. Because Gong Dai's back was facing her, she couldn't see his face, but she felt that the other side's figure was very good. He was slender and well-proportioned. To have this kind of figure at this age was already not bad. Gong Yimo held her breath and carefully called out, "Your Highness." The other side did not move. Her courage increased a bit as she called out again, "Your Highness." Seeing that the other side really couldn't hear her, Gong Yimo revealed a proud smile. "Humph, no matter how strong you are, you still can't catch me. I'm right in front of you, come and catch me. Come, come, come." After showing off for a while, Gong Yimo wanted to look at his face. She did not dare turn him over, but her actions were even more daring. She lifted her skirt and carefully stepped over the bed. When she reached the inside of the bed, she squatted down and looked down at him. It was a pity that his hair covered his face, so she could only move the other side's hair aside. This was a very difficult action. After all, if she woke him up, she wouldn't be able to run from this position. Gong Yimo rubbed her hands together nervously and cheered herself on. "Don't worry, he's already dead drunk. If I move gently, he won't wake up. Furthermore, the heavens are helping me. If I miss this opportunity, I won't get another one." Although Gong Yimo cheered herself on, the hand that she extended to Gong Dai was still trembling slightly. What she didn't know was that if Luo Xiaoqi was here, he would definitely be shocked. Since His Highness' cultivation had stabilized half a month ago, no one dared to approach His Highness when he was resting. As long as they came within half a meter of him, they would be repelled by his terrifying internal strength. Vomiting blood was a small matter. However, Gong Yimo was completely unaware of this situation. Not only was she less than half a meter away from him, she even wanted to brush away his hair. Was this the difference between people? Because they were so close, the strong wine fragrance from his body made her feel as if she was a little drunk, and within the wine fragrance, the clear smell was even more distinct. It was really hard to imagine that a man with white hair could smell so good. Gong Yimo's heart was filled with panic and her back was covered in sweat. Her hand was reaching out in slow motion. She was really afraid that the other side would suddenly open his eyes and grab her. That would be too scary, alright? Finally, with a spurt of energy, she used the softest and most gentle movements to gently brush away the hair on his face. Gong Yimo did not breathe the entire time, but after brushing away his hair, she couldn't help taking in a cold breath. There was no other reason, she was just too shocked. This person was actually not old. Moreover, he was really good-looking. Gong Yimo's heart was beating fast. She swore that she had never seen such a good-looking person before. She thought that her master was the peak, but this person was simply too beautiful. Gong Yimo couldn't help moving closer. She thought with some regret that it would be good if he opened his eyes. He would definitely look even better with his eyes open, but at this time, her head suddenly hurt. The fragments of Han Duo flew over. She had seen this person before. She knew him. Gong Yimo felt that she was about to remember, but because it was too painful, Gong Yimo couldn't help but kneel on the bed. She looked at the man in front of her and called out for some unknown reason. Gong Dai. The next second, Gong Dai suddenly opened his eyes. Was this a dream? Was he dreaming? Gong Dai was in a daze. He shook his head, trying to see the person clearly, but realized that she didn't look like his royal sister. How could it not be? This was clearly the smell of her body. Gong Dai leaned over and pushed her down. Then, he leaned over and sniffed her body. Gong Yimo was completely stunned. Gong Dai's actions scared her so much that her head didn't hurt anymore. Her rationality instantly returned. The feeling of breaking something just now disappeared. She shrank into the corner of the wall. Gong Dai actually crawled over and leaned over her body. He even leaned over and sniffed her body. Scary. She clearly smelled of kaipo grass. What was he sniffing? Was he sober or drunk? Gong Yimo's entire back was pressed against the corner of the wall. Unfortunately, he was getting closer and closer. His blurry eyes opened. It was as though there was a layer of mist in them, giving him a different kind of allure. Gong Yimo's guess was right. He looked even better when he woke up. That tall nose and sexy thin lips made one want to take a bite. Damn it. Don't get so close, okay? I'm going to pounce on you. Gong Yimo widened her eyes like a cat that had been pushed to the limit. If Gong Dai went overboard, she would definitely give Gong Dai a claw. Gong Dai tilted his head slightly and looked at her in confusion. It didn't seem like it. The smell was her, but it was so pungent. He knelt on top of Gong Yimo and rubbed his nose. That silly and cute look was simply against the rules, okay? What happened to being cold, domineering, ruthless, and heartless? Gong Yimo restrained the wolf in her body. Her eyes moved away from his face with difficulty and slowly moved to the side. She was sure that this guy was still drunk. She was also sure that she had seen him before. But damn it, she almost remembered just now. But when this person woke up, her 3 souls and 7 spirits instantly returned to their original place. Now, her heart was beating wildly. Her mind was only thinking about his beauty, okay? Let's talk about it after we get out. When Gong Dai saw that Gong Yimo wanted to run, he reflexively pulled her back. The two of them rolled around. In the next second, Gong Yimo realized that she was under someone's body. This position. Gong Yimo felt danger. But before she could say anything, her chin was violently grabbed by someone. Why are you running? Gong Dai said fiercely. However, he was drunk and looked like he was unconscious. His fierce words were not intimidating at all. Instead, it made Gong Yimo feel that he was a little cute. His face was blessed by the heavens. No matter what expression he made, one could not take their eyes off him. Chapter 647. She felt that she had gone crazy. She was being pressed down by someone, yet she still thought that he was cute. She even couldn't bear to blink. What was with that damned familiar feeling? Could it be that she had been pressed down before? When Gong Dai saw that Gong Yimo wasn't speaking, he was even more displeased. He pouted his lips and said angrily, "Why didn't you come and look for me?" Gong Yimo was baffled. "Do you know how long I've been looking for you? If you were still alive, why didn't you come and look for me?" Gong Dai's expression had a tinge of misery. This was the reason why he was in so much pain and couldn't say it out loud. If Royal Sister was still alive, it was impossible for her not to look for him. The only possibility was, she was dead and someone else had taken her stone heart, so he couldn't find her. Gong Yimo blinked. She didn't know why, but seeing him like this made her chest hurt. It was really strange. Could it be that Beauty's pain was contagious? He must have mistaken her for someone else, right? She didn't know who that person was. Do you know or not? When Gong Dai saw that she wasn't paying attention, he held her face with both hands and forced her to look at him. At that moment, the deep affection in his eyes almost overflowed. For a second, Gong Yimo thought that she was jealous of the person in his heart. Gong Dai's misty eyes looked at her quietly. It was as if her ordinary face was everything in the world. "Do you know how much I miss you?" That slightly trembling male voice made Gong Yimo feel that somewhere in the depths of her heart seemed to tremble as well. She felt that she had been bewitched, right? Because she saw that Gong Dai was so sad and deeply in love, she actually wanted to comfort him. The moment she opened her mouth, she couldn't help but say, I miss you too." At that moment, it was as if she saw a bright galaxy. Gong Ju's eyes lit up in an instant because of her word. Damn it. Gong Yimo couldn't wait to give herself 2 tight slaps. She couldn't go on like this. Beauty really misled people. She wanted to coax him into letting her go, but in the next second, her face was held by him and he kissed her forcefully. Gong Yimo seemed to have woken up from a dream. What was she doing? She was pressed down on the bed and had his way with her. She wanted to struggle, but how could Gong Dai let her go? Even if she fully recovered her martial arts, she would still be no match for Gong Dai, let alone now. She felt as if there was a mountain pressing down on her body. Her hands couldn't push him away, but he held her face and kissed her deeply again and again. His body was hard and hot. Gong Yimo felt like she was about to melt. The fragrance of the wine passed through her mouth again and again, and she felt as if she was drunk as well. Her body was unbelievably soft, and in the depths of her heart, she actually felt that she was yearning for more. Gong Dai kissed her vigorously and bit her. This was the taste, so sweet that it almost drove him crazy. Was he dreaming? If this was a dream, he would never wake up again. Gong Yimo's clothes were ruined. She felt a chill in front of her chest. To her horror, she realized that she was about to be raped. No. She was pregnant. Gong Dai. Woo. Gong Dai, Gong Dai. Gong Yimo suddenly thought of his name without anyone teaching her. Hearing the woman he loved call his name, Gong Dai really couldn't get enough of it. He let go of her little mouth and gently coaxed her. Baby. Call me a few more times. Baby. Gong Yimo's little heart started to beat wildly. Could he not use such a sexy voice and such sexy lips to call her baby? She felt that she was a very moral person, so why was she unable to resist him? Could it be that she was a hidden pervert? Gong Dai, she called him again. Just as she was about to speak, Gong Dai kissed her again, but this time, he was extremely gentle and lingering, making Gong Yimo dance with him unknowingly. The scent that belonged to him surrounded her strongly, as if it was everywhere. Gong Yimo's face was so red that it was dripping blood, but she couldn't resist his kiss. Especially when he kissed her so gently, it was as if all the energy in her body had been sucked away. What exactly was going on? Hug me. Baby. His hot breath blew against Gong Yimo's pink earlobes. She trembled sensitively, and in exchange, he kissed her even more passionately. It couldn't be. How could she be so shameless? She felt that she wasn't such a person, so why couldn't she resist him? It was so strange. She felt that her body had become so strange. The two of them kissed passionately, and their ambiguous voices spread throughout the entire room. When Gong Yimo came back to her senses, she was shocked to find that she was actually hugging the other person tightly. Half of their clothes were taken off, and they were almost naked. Her rationality instantly returned. She still couldn't remember who this person was. She didn't want to be eaten clean. Where was her integrity? Where was her rationality? Could you guys put in more effort? Gong Yimo started to resist fiercely. But once she resisted, it was as if she had poked a hornet's nest. The man who had been so gentle with her just now suddenly used force. He used one hand to imprison both her hands above her head, and his eyes seemed to be burning with fire. You want to escape? His voice was no longer as gentle as before, and had become extremely dangerous. You want to leave me? Gong Yimo was shocked to find that she couldn't resist him at all. She instinctively wanted to shout for her master to save her, but her face was pinched hard by Gong Dai, and she could only make muffled sound. She was done for. Was she going to be raped? Gong Dai's gaze was very scary. He was practically tearing her clothes apart. Then, he rushed in with all his might. It hurts. Gong Yimo stuttered, and tears instantly flowed out. She was already pregnant, so why was it still so painful? When Gong Dai saw her sobbing, his heart softened. He hugged her and coaxed her. Baby, don't cry. It won't hurt in a while. I'll make you feel good. Gong Yimo gritted her teeth tightly and glared at him angrily. But he seemed to be in heaven. His vigorous movements made her feel so painful that she wanted to curse. But when she thought about how if she really screamed and her master came in and saw this scene, she might as well die. She had only wanted to peek at one person, but she didn't expect that in the end. Gong Yimo gritted her teeth and cried. Her impression of Gong Dai instantly became negative. So he was such a terrible person. No wonder he kept chasing after her. It was also her fault for being mesmerized by his beauty and doing such a thing. Sob sob sob, she was really a person with no morals. What should she do? Although she didn't have any feelings for her master, they did have a child by accident, and she did such a thing. She suddenly hated herself for being like this. Gong Yimo didn't realize it herself. She blamed herself and hated herself, but she didn't feel disgusted by Gong Dai who forcefully took advantage of her. The body often carried memories, and her body was very familiar with Gong Dai. If it were someone else, she would definitely not have resigned herself to it. Chapter 648. Gong Dai felt that this was definitely the best dream he had ever had. The woman he loved was lying under him, allowing him to do whatever he wanted. He was so happy that he felt like he was about to fly. Gong Yimo could still bear it at first, but Gong Dai didn't seem to know what fatigue was. He was so talented that it made her lower abdomen hurt more and more. Suddenly, she thought of something and suddenly pushed Gong Dai away. Gong Dai was caught off guard and was really pushed away by her. The unsatisfied man's expression immediately turned fierce. He thought that Gong Yimo was going to leave him again. Just as he was about to pull her back and press her down, Gong Yimo said with a sobbing tone. Don't come over. I'm pregnant. Gong Dai's movements instantly stop. That's right. Royal sister is pregnant. Even if it's just a dream, I can't go overboard. Seeing that Gong Dai didn't move, Gong Yimo cried softly. Then, she used the blanket to cover her body and carefully glanced at Gong Dai's expression. After a while, Gong Dai finally moved. He was no longer as fierce as before. He inched closer and very gently buried his head in her abdomen. Our child. Gong Yimo quickly nodded. Yes, yes, yes. It's your child. You can't do that to me again, you'll hurt him. Gong Dai felt a little uncomfortable holding it in, but when he thought about how this was his child and the woman he loved the most, he held it in. He buried his head in her embrace and deeply inhaled her scent. His woman. His child. This dream was surprisingly beautiful. Gong Yimo saw that he stopped moving and let out a sigh of relief. Then, she glared at Gong Dai angrily at a place where he couldn't see. Little did he know that his previous actions had already made Gong Yimo dislike him. She really wanted to bite this bastard to death. But she didn't dare to. Carefully wiping away her tears, Gong Yimo pouted angrily. Could he force himself on others just because he was drunk? She swore. After she ran out, she would never appear in front of this person again, but in order to escape from here, she had no choice but to appease this terrifying drunk man. What should she do? Although they hadn't fought, she could feel that he was stronger than her master. That inadvertently revealed deterrence made people tremble in fear. However, the gentleness that was revealed after the absolute dominance was even more mesmerizing. He gently pressed against her stomach, and that careful feeling was as if he was protecting a rare treasure. Gong Yimo steeled her heart and hugged him. Gong Dai was confused and wanted to raise his head, but Gong Yimo pressed his head down domineeringly. Sleep. Gong Dai wanted to move, but Gong Yimo was hugging him, so he did not resist. In fact, as long as Gong Yimo took the initiative a little, he could turn from an angry lion into a little lamb, and then be obedient and let her do whatever she wanted. Gong Yimo saw the dark circles under his eyes, and thought that he probably hadn't slept well for a long time. Her heart suddenly ached. Strange, she actually felt heartache for a man who had just done something so overboard to her. Damn it. She wanted to give him 2 punches to let him know how powerful she was, but the other party was so docile now, so she didn't want to provoke him. Sleep. Gong Dai hugged her for a while, and after his desire gradually subsided, the fatigue in his body surged up again, mixed with the alcohol, making him completely unable to open his eyes. But he didn't dare to sleep. He was afraid that he wouldn't be able to see her if he slept, so he forced himself to stay awake. But the smell on her body was so peaceful, and his head was hugged by her 2 hands, and his head was resting on her soft chest. Soon, he felt that he couldn't hold on anymore. Baby. Don't leave me. His somewhat pained voice spoke of his endless attachment, and she didn't know who the baby in his heart was. Gong Yimo's heart was filled with mixed feelings, and she frowned. After a while, she reached out and touched his hair. Okay, I won't leave you, don't go. Millimeter, I won't go. Gong Dai seemed to be relieved, and he actually fell asleep in her arms. His gentle breath blew on her skin, and she blushed. She suddenly had some doubts in her heart. Although she wasn't a woman of 3 chastity and 9 virginity, it was impossible for her to not resist being taken advantage of for no reason. Yes, she didn't want to resist. She even felt that it wasn't the first time she was treated like this by him. The only explanation was they knew each other before, and it was very likely that it was that kind of relationship. Then this child. Was it really Master's? Thinking that Master had admitted it himself, she felt that she was thinking too much. After all, Master wouldn't lie. Sigh. So messy, so messy. Gong Yimo was a little annoyed. No matter what, she should go out and think about this question. She prepared to leave, but who knew that Gong Dai hugged her very tightly in his sleep, as if he was afraid that she would run away. At this moment, they weren't wearing any clothes, and she felt so awkward even if she moved a little. Gong Yimo gritted her teeth, and she didn't care whether Gong Dai could hear her or not, and said softly, You're pressing down on the child. It was quite amazing. Gong Yimo realized that she could actually move him. Was this person asleep or not? Was he pretending to be drunk, and then deliberately using the alcohol to commit a crime? Her face flushed red, and she moved away bit by bit. This time, she finally escaped. Thinking about what she had done halfway, she angrily glared at the man on the bed. But it was undeniable that he was clean and cold in his sleep, just like the snow on the heavenly mountain. This kind of him really made people unable to hate him at all. She didn't know if it was because of her hidden memories or because she really couldn't reject this man, but after such a thing happened, other than hating herself, she actually didn't hate this man at all. How hateful. Gong Yimo hit herself in disappointment, and then put all the clothes on the bed that belonged to her into her space. Finally, she endured the tearing pain between her legs and took out some clothes from her space to change. Gong Dai was sleeping the whole time, but without Gong Yimo in his arms, his brows gradually furrowed, and for some reason, it made people feel sorry for him. Gong Yimo was conflicted for a long time, but she still decided to leave. Although she might be able to get more information from before she lost her memories if she stayed, this man had just done such a thing to her. She really didn't dare to stay any longer. Just as she was about to leave, she suddenly saw something on his neck that looked quite familiar. Because he was lying on the bed, it blocked the important part. Gong Yimo endured the shame and went over, and pulled out the chain. There was a round thing hanging on it. Gong Yimo looked. Wasn't that her compass? Why was it in this person's hands? Also, there was a black ring on the chain. Gong Yimo carefully removed the silver chain from the compass, and as for the black ring, she took it with her as well. Finally, she looked at a certain drunk bastard, and her expression was very complicated. She would think about it carefully when she got out. Chapter 649. When Gong Yimo came out, she was still in a daze. She was eaten for no reason. She actually let him go, and she didn't hate him. She slapped her head hard. Gong Yimo, are you out of your mind? How did this happen? Her face fell. She looked around and found that Luo Xiaoqi and the others were not there, so she walked out slowly. At this time, she was in a daze. She didn't think about why those people were not there. She just wandered out. What was strange was that the people guarding the door were also gone. Gong Yimo slipped out smoothly. She couldn't wrap her head around how she was eaten for a long time. People said that pregnancy makes one stupid for 3 years. She wasn't even born yet, and she was already stupid. As she walked, she was suddenly patted from behind. Gong Yimo turned around. When she saw that it was her master, she couldn't hold back the grievance in her heart. She cried out loud. Qiu Xingfeng was flustered. What happened to you? Qiu Xingfeng saw that Gong Yimo didn't come out for a long time. He was a little anxious and accidentally made some noise. As a result, everyone came to chase him. He had no choice but to lead them around the palace. When he came back, he saw that Gong Yimo was in a daze. He patted her and she cried. Could it be that he had scared her out of her wits? Don't cry. I didn't mean to scare you. Seeing that Qiu Xingfeng was so silly, Gong Yimo cried even louder. What should she do? She seemed to have made her master a cuckold. What should she do? The more she thought about it, the more uncomfortable she felt. She wanted to die. Afraid that she would attract people, Qiu Xingfeng took her to a more secluded place and comforted her helplessly. Don't cry. What happened? Woo. Gong Yimo didn't want to hide it from him. She choked and said, Master, Prince Regent. He bullied me. Qiu Xingfeng was anxious. He hit you. It was impossible. Gong Yimo was his sister. He looked for her everywhere. Why would he hit her? Could it be? Qiu Xingfeng stared at her belly in shame. This was the only explanation. Gong Dai found out that his sister was pregnant and hit her in disappointment. In the past, he had seen a pregnant girl being dragged into the river to drown by her parents. He had wanted to save her, but his master had stopped him and said that he could not save her. Gong Yimo saw that Qiu Xingfeng obviously didn't understand what she meant by bullying, so she was even more devastated. Qiu Xingfeng's heart ached. He hurriedly wiped her tears. I'm sorry. I didn't protect you well. He paused and said awkwardly, how about this? We won't see him anymore. Don't cry, okay? Gong Yimo nodded, feeling wronged as she wiped her tears in his arms. Master was right. No matter what kind of entanglement they had in the past, this time, he had done such a thing to her as soon as they met. She didn't want to see him again. Right now, she just wanted to quickly regain her memories and figure out why she was so familiar with him and why she didn't resist him. Just like this, she was taken away by Qiu Xingfeng while crying. She was as weak as a frozen cabbage. It wasn't until late at night that Gong Dai woke up. First of all, he had a headache. He had drunk too much during the day. Although he had slept for a few hours under the excuse of being drunk, he still had a splitting headache when he woke up. Also, he seemed to have had a dream. In the dream, his royal sister came back. She even said that she missed him. He couldn't help but kiss her, and then, Gong Dai's eyes darkened. How he wished that it wasn't a dream, but when he got up, he was horrified to find that his clothes had all been taken off. Could it be that he would unconsciously take off his clothes when he had an unspeakable dream? Those clear images flashed through his mind once again. She was hiding in the corner, the strength she used to push him away, and her lips that were so sweet that it made him go crazy. Were those really dreams? If they weren't dreams, how could it be? She suddenly came to his side and then suddenly left. This didn't make sense. But how did he take off his clothes? Gong Dai's eyes were dark and unclear. Ever since he had stabilized his realm, he would have a protective layer of true qi around his body whenever he was unconscious or sleeping. It was impossible for anyone to get close to him without being repelled. The only explanation was that he had taken off his clothes himself, or perhaps it was Imperial Sister. Only she could get close to him. Gong Dai was very sure of this. He would never reject her. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but put on his clothes and go out. Unexpectedly, there were many people waiting in front of the door, including those who were ordered to go out. Usually, at this time, the prince would ask them if they had any clues. Lo Qi was about to step forward to answer, but Gong Dai turned to Luo Xiaoqi. "You've been guarding here today?" Luo Xiaoqi was flattered. He didn't know why, but he suddenly felt that his prince didn't seem to be so angry. When he spoke, he didn't feel cold anymore. "Yes, Your Highness." Luo Xiaoqi quickly stepped forward and bowed. Gong Dai asked solemnly, "Did anyone enter my room today?" Luo Xiaoqi raised his head in confusion. No, it was rare for the prince to sleep soundly. How could they go in and disturb him? Weren't they all guarding outside? Gong Dai stared at Luo Xiaoqi and frowned deeply. Luo Xiaoqi was startled, and his brain turned quickly. Yes, there was a group of people. As soon as he said that, Gong Dai's eyes lit up. Who? It was a maid in the palace. The king asked them to send you wine, but you were already asleep at that time, so they left. He fell asleep at that time? Was he wearing clothes at that time, or was he undressed? Gong Dai was too embarrassed to ask, so he just said coldly, "When they left, was there anything special? Like expression?" Luo Xiaoqi shook his head stupidly. "Nothing. They came out soon. Why is the prince acting strange tonight?" Luo Xiaoqi thought in confusion. Gong Dai felt that it was a mistake to let Luo Xiaoqi stay to take care of him. If it was Luo Qi, he absolutely would not have a sloppy appearance. Lo Qi saw that the prince's expression was not good again, so he quickly glared at Luo Xiaoqi. "Think carefully, what else?" Luo Xiaoqi became nervous. "And there was an assassin, but this subordinate promises that he never entered your room." Gong Dai's face darkened. "Assassin? Was it a man or a woman?" Luo Xiaoqi scratched his head. "It was a man, wearing linen clothes. Your Highness, this subordinate can swear that he didn't enter your room. He turned around and ran away as soon as he was discovered." Gong Dai didn't give up. "You went to chase the assassin? How long have you been away? Did anyone come in during this time?" Chapter 650. Luo Xiaoqi answered him straightforwardly, replying, "To your Highness, this subordinate didn't leave for long. Not long after, this subordinate remembered that you couldn't be alone. This subordinate let little 8 and little 9 chase after her while I came back. Because there was an assassin, this subordinate didn't guard outside the hall after I came back. I just stayed at your door and didn't even take a step out." His resolute tone made Gong Dai depressed. Was it really just his imagination? Wasn't that too realistic? With this suspicion, he didn't listen to what Lo Qi said. He was absent-minded during the meal. He always felt that he missed something and refused to believe that it was just a wet dream. Until he saw the black ring on his hand. Originally, there was a pair of them, and one of them was around his neck. Gong Dai subconsciously touched his chest. He didn't notice it when he got up in a hurry. But now, he finally realized what he missed. The ring. His ring was gone. Not only that, his necklace was also gone. Gong Dai carefully touched his neck and his clothes. Then he got up and went to the bed. At this time, the bed had been tidied up. He asked someone to see if they saw his necklace. Gong Dai's subordinate was confused. If he found the necklace, how could he not hand it over? He shook his head to make sure that he didn't see any necklace. Gong Dai was a little anxious. He forced himself to calm down and asked again. When you tidied up the bed, did you find anything strange? That person thought for a long time. Seeing Gong Dai's serious expression, he didn't dare to hide it anymore. He whispered in embarrassment, there was a very strange smell on the quilt. But the palace servants should have washed it away by now. Smell. He remembered. In his dream, the royal sister also had a very strange smell. Maybe he wasn't dreaming. It was really her. She came and took away the necklace she gave him and the ring he prepared to give her. They also did that kind of thing. Gong Dai's face turned red and white. He was shocked and doubtful. The subordinate was very nervous. He thought that he had done something unintentionally to make the prince unhappy. Cold sweat flowed down his body. Your Highness. Did this subordinate? You're very good. In the candlelight, he actually saw his prince smiling at him. There will be a reward. There will be a reward. That person couldn't wait to run away. Who can explain what is going on? When that person came out of Gong Dai's room in a daze, Luo Xiaoqi ran over nervously and quietly asked, "What's wrong? Did the prince punish you?" "No." He scratched his head. "His Highness gave me a lot of things." As expected, Luo Xiaoqi showed a frightened expression. "What should I do? His Highness seems to be going crazy." Perhaps it was because he slept during the day, but Gongju couldn't fall asleep. He couldn't help but lie on the bed and sniff carefully. After confirming that there was no smell at all, he sighed regretfully. After a long while, he touched his neck and revealed a somewhat silly smile. Royal sister was still alive. His smile grew bigger and bigger. He had never been so sure. Royal sister was still alive. Those weren't his dreams. Royal sister came and said that she missed him. They also did that kind of thing. He only let her go when she said that she was on top of the child. Their child was also sure to be alive. She even took away the necklace and ring. The more Gong Dai thought about it, the more he couldn't control himself. Gongju's entire body was stirred up by the memory of her sweet little mouth and the ecstasy he felt in his dream. He was so excited that he couldn't sleep. But why did she leave? Gong Dai's smile gradually faded. Why did she take advantage of his drunken state to come and leave without a sound? And that assassin was actually the person who came to pick her up. Why did she leave when she could move freely? There was only one explanation, because royal sister couldn't control the parasite anymore. She was afraid that she would hurt her, so she refused to return to his side. That silly girl. Gong Dai was going crazy. He frowned and laughed again. He hugged the pillow and really felt like he was going crazy. He usually didn't drink. Why did he drink today? Gong Dai finally understood what it meant to regret so much that his intestines turned green. If he didn't drink, perhaps he would be hugging his baby to sleep now. Why did he drink? Gong Dai rolled around on the bed. But in the end, he was happy. He was sure that royal sister was still alive. He also knew that their child was fine. She was safe too. That was great. Was there any news better than this? Gong Dai decided to calm down. He couldn't look for her so extravagantly anymore. It might scare her, but he wouldn't give up. He had to find her. Since she was here, then he wouldn't leave. He didn't know if the king of the Yi kingdom would cry when he heard the news. Anyway, Gong Yimo had already cried. She thought that her daughter wouldn't come back. She didn't expect that not only did she come back, but she also ran back crying. Shuolian was a little confused. After she reacted, she was depressed. That's why I said that all men are bad. Shuolian thought of many possibilities, but she didn't expect it to be like this. She had originally thought that the best ending would be for the regent to not care about her daughter's past after she lost her memories and to abort the child and start over again. However, when she saw her daughter running back crying, She immediately understood that the regent must have said something to make her daughter so upset. She secretly scolded the regent countless times, but she didn't show a good face to Gong Yimo. You still know to come back. I thought you went out and wouldn't come back. Gong Yimo also felt awkward when she saw her. Anyone who had a mother for no reason would feel like her. After all, they hadn't seen each other for more than 10 years. But after getting along for a while, they found some ways to get along with each other. Aren't I back now? Gong Yimo pouted unhappily. Her eyes were still red. Apparently, she had been crying for a long time. She didn't know why. When she faced Shulian, she was like facing her master. She had a bad temper. She also found it, but she just couldn't control it. Perhaps, this was the nature of blood thicker than water. It made her subconsciously treat Shulian as her own, so she didn't have to hide her temper. Shulian originally wanted to ask, but this was her daughter's sad matter. She felt that it was better to be considerate. So, she didn't ask what happened between her and Gong Dai. She just asked, "Do you remember anything?" Gong Yimo nodded and then shook her head. "I remember part of it. I was about to recover my memory, but the regent suddenly woke up, and then that kind of thing happened." Gong Yimo felt wronged. How could she lose her virginity? Chapter 651. Shulian breathed a sigh of relief. It doesn't matter if you remember or not, she hoped that her daughter could continue to be close to the Snow Clan. She knew that she was going too far, but she was the Holy Virgin of the Snow Clan. Not everyone in the Snow Clan was bad. But now the regent hated the Snow Clan to the core, and there was no way for the Snow Clan to survive outside. Originally, she hoped that after her daughter was close to the Snow Clan, even if the regent found out about this place, he would spare the people here for her daughter's sake. But now, her daughter seemed to have fallen out with the regent, so she gave up on this idea. She didn't know why, but after she put down her plan, she felt a lot more relaxed. If they really fell out, it would be good. If her daughter was close to the Snow Clan, even if she remembered everything in the future, she would be willing to continue living here. Gong Yimo bit her lower lip and suddenly asked, "Auntie Lian, I used to have that kind of relationship with the regent." She wanted to ask her master, but how could her silly master explain it clearly? She knew that Shulian must know. Shulian was a bit confused. What part did her daughter remember? Why did she ask this? But she still nodded. Seeing her nod, Gong Yimo had already imagined a whole abusive relationship in her mind. She clearly remembered that the body she transmigrated into was the 7th princess of Dau. The regent Gong Ju was her nominal younger brother. Perhaps, she fell in love with her younger brother, but her younger brother fell in love with someone else. In a fit of anger, she killed the woman her younger brother liked, and her younger brother began to hunt her down. It must be like this. Otherwise, why would there be so many scenes in her mind? And her feelings for Gong Dai were very strange. She was taken by him, but she didn't hate him. The only explanation was, she liked him, but in the end, she was injured and almost died. Her martial arts were good, and she had the space. How did she end up like this? It must be the regent who attacked her. What a melodramatic drama. Gong Yimo suddenly felt that she didn't want to get her memories back so much. Seeing her daughter's pale face, Shulian stopped provoking her and said, "It's good that you fell out with him. He's too dangerous. It's good that you can forget about your feelings for him and start over." Shulian thought that Gong Dai disliked Gong Yimo for having a child, so the two fell out. However, she thought that her daughter liked Gong Dai very much, so she persuaded her. Unexpectedly, Gong Yimo looked at her and nodded affirmatively. "Yes. I won't be so stupid in the future." Gong Yimo thought that she would never appear again. If she remembered her feelings for Gong Dai, wouldn't she start a new round of torturous love? Xue Lian nodded. "It's good that you can look on the bright side." She thought that the regent was a good man, but she didn't expect him to be the same as those stinky men. It would be best if his daughter could let go. The two of them were talking in the same language, completely oblivious to the huge loophole behind their seemingly harmonious conversation. What kind of blunder was this? That's why it's important to talk things out clearly between people. Overthinking things will cause problems. Seeing that Gong Yimo was still unhappy, Shulian thought that her daughter must have suffered a big blow this time. She couldn't help but look at Gong Yimo's belly. Thinking of something, she couldn't help but say, "Have you ever thought about what to do with the child?" Gong Yimo looked at her belly blankly. The child was still small. What should she do? Shulian looked at her with disappointment. You don't want to raise the child alone in the future, do you? Gong Yimo nodded. Master was still a child. It was right that she wanted to raise the child by herself. Hearing this, Shulian instantly became angry. Is Chuxingfeng unwilling to take responsibility? No. Gong Yimo just thought that she hadn't recovered her memory yet, so she couldn't do anything that couldn't be undone. Seeing that Chuxingfeng didn't refuse to take responsibility, Shulian's face softened a little. Since he's willing to take responsibility, don't delay it. Get married. Otherwise, what will happen when the child grows up without a father? Gong Yimo widened her eyes. That's not good, is it? She didn't know why, but when it came to marriage, she actually thought of Gong Ju. Damn it, why did she think of that man? What's not good about it? Shulian looked at her with unkind eyes. Why, are you still thinking of Prince Regent? He treated you like this, and you still think of him? Her words were super misleading. Gong Yimo was more and more sure of the melodramatic fantasy in her mind, so she hesitated a little. At this time, Shulian had already made a domineering decision. Her daughter was so good. Why should she hang herself on Prince Regent? Chuxingfeng was quite good. He was silly, but he was obedient to Mo-er. There was nothing to be picky about. Besides, they already had a child. It was natural for them to get married. That's settled. I'll go back and tell Fuya. As he said, he looked at Gong Yimo with a complicated look. When the time comes, I'll give you an identity, okay? Gong Yimo's thoughts were a little messy. Hearing this, she couldn't help but look at her. However, she saw that Shulian's charming face was a little embarrassed. When the time comes, you'll marry as the princess of Lian Kingdom. Do you have any objections? Gong Yimo thought quickly. If she agreed, wouldn't she have to call herself Shulian's mother? She looked up at Shulian's nonchalant face, but her hands were tightly grasping her clothes. She was actually not as nonchalant as she looked. So Gong Yimo sighed. Whatever. Shulian's face was obviously happy. Her daughter acknowledged her, but she held back and nodded with a reserved look. Let's not delay. Before your belly gets bigger, we'll get married. Gong Yimo was already helpless. Whatever you say, Shulian was a woman of action. Since Gong Yimo agreed, she would do it. Wait, you said you didn't ask Chuxingfeng's opinion? He made her daughter pregnant, and he didn't want to take responsibility. Therefore, Gong Ju didn't know that his mother-in-law was already preparing to marry his daughter-in-law off. Your Highness, it's here. Lo Chi was very efficient. There were many small countries around Yi Kingdom. Calling them countries was an exaggeration. They only had one city. In the past few days, they had searched several places around. This Lian Kingdom was the last one. Lian Kingdom. Gong Dai sat on the horse, dressed in black. He softly said these two words. Because he had confirmed that the royal sister was still alive, Gong Dai's mood had calmed down a lot. However, he still didn't stop looking for her. Whenever he thought of the royal sister beside him, he couldn't wait to find her immediately. He swore. When he saw the royal sister, he would definitely bite her hard. This little vixen actually came and ran away. After eating him up, she slipped away. He really couldn't bear it. Chapter 652. Gong Dai urged his horse forward. Sure enough, he was stopped just like Gong Yimo. The guards saw Gong Dai and his group. Although they were few in number, they were all cold and solemn. The man in the lead was even colder. With one look, one could tell that he was not an ordinary person, so the guard asked awkwardly, May I ask who you are? Lo Chi was about to answer when Gong Dai waved his hand to stop him. Gong Dai. Gong Dai reported his name. At this moment, he was high and mighty, looking down at the guards below. He used an extremely cold tone to order. Call your king to come out and meet me. Gong Dai's words were very arrogant. Those who did not know would think that he was here to cause trouble. However, Gong Dai's aura was very oppressive. The guard swallowed his saliva and went to report without saying a word. Gong Dai originally thought that after meeting the Lian Kingdom's king, he would force him to help him find his daughter. He did not expect that his appearance would cause the entire Lian Kingdom to be in chaos. When Shuilian heard the report, she, who was decorating the wedding hall, accidentally smashed the dragon phoenix candle in her hand. The regent is here? Why is he here? Could it be that Moa had leaked their tracks last time? No, if that was the case, the regent would not have come only today. The only explanation was that he had not given up on finding Moa. He was here to find Moa. Fu Wei quickly comforted her. It's fine. Didn't you hear that he only brought a few people? Maybe he's only here to find someone and not to find us. Shuilian nodded. She was still a little worried. Rumor has it that the regent is very meticulous. I'm just afraid that he'll find some clues. Fu Wei was actually worried about this too, but he still said, different situations call for different actions. There's always a way out. After Shuilian calmed down, she ordered that no one was to reveal hostility or reveal their surnames to the regent. Then she went to Moa's place. She wanted to hide her daughter. Fu Wei personally went to welcome Gong Dai in with a good attitude. Just like the kings of other small countries, he was very respectful to Gong Dai. Gong Dai rode his horse into the city and walked slowly on the main road. He keenly noticed that the commoners here seemed to be a little different. They all seemed to be minding their own business, but inadvertently, some of them were looking at him evasively, as if he was some kind of man-eating monster. When Fu Wei saw this, he couldn't help but explain, Your Highness must be joking. In the past, when the villagers heard of Your Highness's fame, they were all timid, let alone seeing the real person. Gong Dai didn't answer. His sharp eyes swept across the room, and he memorized all the oddities. He said casually, Your construction here is pretty good. When Fu Wei heard this, he hurriedly raised his spirits and replied, Your Highness is too kind. It's just an ordinary town. The two of them went back and forth, seemingly happy and harmonious. Little did they know that Fu Wei's back was completely soaked with cold sweat. His whole body was tense. Obviously, the other party was only a teenager, but the pressure he gave off was too heavy. Fu Wei couldn't help but move a little further away from him, so that he could breathe more smoothly. Gong Dai pretended not to notice his small movements and stated his purpose. This prince's princess consort got lost in this area. I wonder if City Lord has taken in any citizens of other countries recently. He paused, his thin lips moving. There is also a guard, 2 people. Those clear black and white eyes quietly stared at Fu Wei, as if to prevent him from lying. But Fu Wei was still a man in his 40s. Under his forceful gaze, he could still be considered calm, definitely not. To be honest, because this town is too small, there are more and more people. So since last year, Lian country has not allowed outsiders to enter, not even for a night's rest. Gong Dai saw that there were quite a lot of people around, so he believed Fu Wei's words a little. However, this prince still needs City Lord's help. If there is news of the princess consort, this prince will not treat City Lord unfairly. Fu Wei smiled, that's right, that's right. If I see someone suspicious, this prince will definitely inform you immediately. Gong Dai nodded, his attitude casual as he looked around. In fact, he was a little suspicious of Fu Wei. Even if he disguised himself very well, what kind of person was Gong Dai? Even the slightest movement could not escape his eyes. He could feel that Fu Wei was nervous, and this kind of nervousness was different from the reverence of others. The people of this city were also strange. Every time their gazes fell on him, they would quickly move away, as if they knew who he was. This city had a secret. After coming to this conclusion, Gong Dai, who had originally planned to walk around and leave, made a request to have a meal here. Fu Yue was surprised, but he naturally agreed with a smile. However, in his heart, he was inwardly annoyed. He was afraid that the regent would stay here for too long. When they arrived at the palace, Gong Dai was a little dazed as he looked at the sea of red. It seems that this prince came at the wrong time, Gong Dai said ambiguously. Staring at the red, he felt that it was dazzling for no reason. Fu Yue hurriedly smiled apologetically. Your Highness must be joking. Your visit brings light to Lian country's humble dwelling. As for these wedding cloths, it's like this prince's daughter is going to get married in a few days. Gong Dai naturally did not say that he wanted to drink the wedding wine. A small Lian country did not have the qualifications to do so. However, when he felt that the palace servants around him were even more frightened and careful than the people outside, Gong Dai frowned. Even if they tried to hide it, who was Gong Dai? He might not be able to sense other things, but he was already extremely familiar with the fear others had towards him. The only reason why everyone in this city was afraid of him was because of his identity as the regent. The royal sister might not be here, but this city was not simple. Gong Dai drank a mouthful of wine with waning interest. He did not have much interest. At this time, other than the royal sister, he did not have the desire to find out any secrets. Therefore, even if he felt that something was wrong, he did not say anything. When Gong Ju saw Fu Yue sitting in front of him with a stiff smile, he couldn't help but ask, "Oh, your daughter. Where is she?" On the other side, Gong Yimo was almost on fire. When she thought that the person who raped her a few days ago had come to find her, she wished she could turn into a butterfly and fly away. Shuolian was relatively calm. "Don't panic, I will use the secret passage to send you out of the city." "Then what about you?" Gong Yimo was a little worried about them. Seeing that Gong Yimo was subconsciously concerned about her, Shuolian could not help but laugh. "It's okay, it's okay." Before Qiu Xingfeng could figure out the situation, Shuolian had already stuffed him and Gong Yimo into the secret passage. There was a secret passage here? Gong Yimo looked at the passage in front of her with some difficulty. Why did she have a very uneasy feeling? If the regent found out that this was the nest of the Snow Clan, wouldn't there be a fight? If the regent wanted to kill the Snow Clan, they would not be able to escape even if they dug a passage. Gong Yimo sighed and pulled Qiu Xingfeng to the other exit. On the way, Gong Yimo suddenly asked, "Master, you said that the regent killed the Snow Clan because of me? Because she killed the woman he loved, it was not enough that the regent wanted to kill her, but also the entire Snow Clan? No, it was too cruel." She felt that before she lost her memory, every day must have been very painful. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.